Hey, everyone! If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
All right, the game is over, Peter in the suit said. Now it's time to get down to business. Peter nodded, walked up to Lily, looked at her, and his eyes were filled with complex emotions. Lily looked at Peter wanting to say something but ultimately said nothing. She could sense that Peter was no longer the Peter she used to be. Lily, Peter said softly, I'm sorry. Lily shook her head, she didn't know what to say. 533 I have to go, Peter said. There are some things I have to do. He turned and left without the slightest hesitation. Lily watched Peter's departing figure, her heart filled with sadness and confusion. She didn't know where Peter was going or if they would ever see each other again. Peter, dressed in a suit, walked up to Lily. He looked at her, a barely perceptible glint of cold light flashing in his eyes. Miss Lily, Peter in the suit said, I think it's time for you to leave. Lily looked up at Peter in his suit, her eyes filled with confusion. Leave, Lily asked. Where to? Peter, dressed in a suit, smiled. Let's go to a safe place. Lily frowned, she sensed a hidden meaning in Peter's words. I don't understand, Lily said. Peter's smile turned somewhat sinister. You don't need to understand, you just need to obey. He snapped his fingers and two men in black came over and dragged Lily away. Lily struggled, but she couldn't break free from the man in black's control. Let me go, where are you taking me? Lily shouted. Peter, dressed in a suit, watched Lily struggle, a flicker of disgust crossing his eyes. It's really noisy, Peter in the suit said. He snapped his fingers again and one of the men in black slapped Lily across the face. Lily was dizzy from the beating. She stopped struggling and stared blankly ahead. Peter in the suit nodded in satisfaction. That's a good boy. He turned and left, leaving only blood and chaos in the banquet hall. Peter walked the streets of Gotham City, his heart filled with confusion and pain. He didn't know where he should go or what he should do. All he knew was that he had to find Peter in the suit and figure out what was going on. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure appear in front of him. Peter. Peter looked up and saw the woman standing in front of him. Catherine, Peter said in surprise. Catherine is Peter's ex-girlfriend and the woman he once loved most. It really is you? Catherine excitedly hugged Peter. Peter paused for a moment, then hugged Catherine tightly. 014501427 Chinese letter 193,540,100. I thought I'd never see you again, Catherine said, her voice choked with emotion. Peter gently patted Catherine's back, his heart filled with warmth and comfort. I'm also very happy to see you again, Peter said. However, at that moment, Peter suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. He looked down and saw that a spear had pierced his heart. You, Peter looked at Catherine in disbelief. A strange smile crept across Catherine's face. 1.0 Goodbye, Peter. Catherine pulled out a dagger and Peter fell to the ground, his blood staining the ground red. Catherine looked at Peter lying on the ground, her eyes devoid of any compassion. I'm sorry, Peter, Catherine said softly. This is the master's order. Catherine turned and left, disappearing into the night. Peter lay in a pool of blood, his consciousness fading. Master, who is it? These were Peter's last thoughts before he lost consciousness. Peter felt his consciousness floating in a chaotic void. He heard a buzzing sound like countless bees fluttering in his ears. Pain, sharp, piercing pain, shot through his chest, making him want to scream, but no sound came out. He tried to open his eyes but found his eyelids as heavy as lead. He didn't know how much time had passed before he finally managed to open his eyes. Through his blurry vision, he saw a dim sky with a few stars twinkling faintly. He moved his fingers and felt a sticky liquid on his hands. He struggled to lift his hand and by the faint starlight saw that his hands were covered in blood. Am I still alive? A question flashed through Peter's mind. He struggled to sit up but found himself weak and powerless with a sharp pain in his chest. He took a deep breath, enduring the pain, and slowly sat up. He looked around and found himself lying in a dirty alley surrounded by garbage and waste. Peter murmured, a flicker of pain and anger in his eyes. He never imagined that the woman he once loved so deeply would personally kill him. And who was this so-called master? He tried hard to recall Catherine's words before she left, the master's orders. These simple words were like a fog shrouding his heart and making him feel extremely confused and uneasy. Peter struggled to his feet and staggered to the alley entrance. He needed to find a place to heal his wounds, and more importantly, he needed to figure out what had happened. He wandered aimlessly through the streets of Gotham City. Night enveloped the city like a gigantic monster, devouring all light and hope. The dim light of the streetlights cast a long shadow of him, making him appear exceptionally lonely and desolate. Suddenly, a commotion broke the silence of the night. Peter looked in the direction of the sound and saw a group of people dressed in strange costumes arguing in front of a bar. These people looked like members of a gang. They were carrying various weapons, shouting and shoving each other. Peter didn't want to get involved, he just wanted to find a place to heal his wounds as soon as possible, but one of them's words caught his attention. "Damn it. That madman is back, this time he stole our goods." A burly man with a face full of scars roared. "Boss, what do we do? Should we go and settle the score with him?" Another skinny man asked with a fawning expression. "Settle accounts? What are you going to use to settle accounts? Do you know how powerful that madman is?" The burly man glared at the skinny man, a hint of fear flashing in his eyes. "Are we just going to eat this mute's special medicine for nothing?" the skinny man said somewhat unwillingly. "Of course not, but we can't confront them head-on, we have to think of a way." The burly man stroked his chin, lost in thought. Peter listened to their conversation and a thought struck him. He was worried about not finding any clues, and perhaps the madman these people mentioned could provide him with some help. He walked to the bar entrance, coldly looking at the group of people. "Where's that madman you were talking about?" When the group saw Peter, they were taken aback at first and then burst into laughter. "Kid, who are you, daring to meddle in our business?" The burly man looked at Peter with disdain, his eyes filled with contempt. "I just want to know where that madman is," Peter said coldly. "Ha ha ha, kid, you're not thinking of going after that madman for revenge, are you? I advise you to save your breath, you're no match for him," the skinny man mocked. "My business is none of your concern," Peter said impatiently. "Kid, you're pretty arrogant, do you know who we are?" The burly man stepped forward, pointing his finger at Peter's nose and cursing. Peter grabbed the burly man's finger and snapped it off. With a crack, the man's finger broke. "Ah!" The burly man let out a scream, clutching his severed finger and rolling on the ground. Seeing this, other gang members pulled out their weapons and surrounded them. "You little brat, you're asking for it." Peter sneered, a cold glint in his eyes. He needed to vent his anger. "You trash dare to lay a hand on me?" Peter's voice was full of disdain and mockery. He flashed forward, instantly appearing in front of a gang member and punching him in the face. The gang member screamed and flew through the air, crashing into the wall and falling unconscious. Before the other gang members could react, Peter launched another attack, raining down punches and kicks. Screams and the sound of bones breaking echoed through the alley. In less than a minute, all the gang members were lying on the ground, groaning in pain. Peter clapped his hands, looking at the group with disdain. A bunch of trash. He turned to leave, but suddenly he sensed a powerful aura rapidly approaching. He looked up and saw a figure in a black cloak descend from the sky and land in front of him. "You're that madman?" Peter looked at the figure in front of him, a hint of excitement flashing in his eyes. "And who are you?" A deep voice came from beneath the black cloak. "Peter, Peter." The figure under the black cloak repeated the name, a hint of amusement in his voice, an interesting name. "Who are you?" Peter asked again. The figure beneath the black cloak slowly raised his head, revealing his true face. It was a pale face with a strange smile and a pair of red eyes that gleamed with a bloodthirsty light. "My name is the Clown." "The Joker," Peter repeated the name, a disdainful smile playing on his lips. "I thought he was someone important, but he's just a madman with a face painted on." The clown chuckled, a sharp, piercing laugh like fingernails scratching a blackboard. "Madman, I like that name, you know, only madmen can live the most freely in this world." He opened his arms as if to embrace the whole world. "Rules, order, those are just shackles for the weak. Only madmen can break everything and enjoy true freedom." Peter scoffed dismissively. "Freedom? Is your so-called freedom just wanton behavior and indiscriminate killing of innocent people?" "Indiscriminate killing?" The clown tilted his head as if he had heard something amusing. No, 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 I never indiscriminately kill innocent people. I only kill boring people. He stuck out his scarlet tongue and licked his lips. You know what? This world is so boring. It needs a little excitement. Peter, too lazy to listen to his nonsense any longer, dodged the clown's punch with a swift movement. However, the clown seemed to have anticipated this, his body twisting strangely to dodge Peter's attack. Tusk, 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 the clown sneered, not bad speed but a bit lacking in strength. Peter frowned and attacked again. This time he used all his strength. His fist whistled through the air as it slammed into the Joker. The clown still didn't take the attacks head-on, nimbly dodging them. Peter's attacks missed again and again, causing a surge of annoyance in his heart. What? Are you angry? The clown's laughter grew even more piercing. That's right. Anger will make you stronger. Come on, let me see your true strength. Peter held back, unleashing a barrage of punches and kicks, each strike carrying the power to destroy everything. Buildings in the alley collapsed one after another, leaving huge craters in the ground. However, no matter how Peter attacked, the Joker always managed to dodge by the narrowest of margins. He was like a slippery eel, impossible to catch. It's useless, the clown taunted as he dodged. No matter how strong you are, you can't hit me, so what's the use? Peter's attacks grew increasingly violent, but his inner turmoil intensified. He felt like a trapped beast, confined in an invisible cage, unable to escape no matter how hard he struggled. The clown seemed to sense Peter's anxiety, and his laughter grew even more maniacal. Give up, you can't beat me. You're destined to be my toy. Toy, Peter roared. Check, you're the toy. He abruptly stopped his attack, took a deep breath, and calmed himself down. He realized he couldn't continue attacking blindly like this. He needed to find the Joker's weakness to defeat him. Calmed down, the Joker looked at Peter with interest. Good, that's getting interesting. He pulled a grenade from his pocket, tossed it in his hand, and asked, Want to play a game? Peter ignored the clown's provocation, staring intently at him, trying to find a weakness in his defense. The clown threw the grenade into the air, then punched Peter hard. Peter dodged the clown's attack to the side, and at the same time the grenade exploded in midair. The shockwave from the explosion leveled the surrounding buildings, and smoke and dust filled the air. The clown's figure disappeared into the dust. Peter looked around warily, searching for any trace of the clown. Suddenly, he felt a gust of wind behind him. He turned around abruptly, only to find the clown had appeared behind him at some point, holding a sharp dagger and aiming it at his heart. Peter had no time to dodge and could only watch helplessly as the dagger pierced his chest. Ah! Peter screamed as his body flew backward and crashed heavily to the ground. The clown slowly walked up to Peter, looking down at him with a victorious smile. I told you, you can't beat me. Peter clutched his chest, blood seeping continuously from between his fingers. He felt his life force rapidly slipping away. Why? Peter asked with difficulty. Why did you do this? The clown crouched down, leaned close to Peter's ear, and whispered, Because. I like to see you in pain. After he finished speaking, he stood up, turned around, and prepared to leave. Wait, Peter said with his last bit of strength. The clown stopped and turned to look at him. Any last words? Peter's lips curled into a strange smile. You fell for it. The clown was stunned, and before he could react, he felt a powerful force erupt from Peter's body. Peter suddenly stood up, grabbed the clown by the neck, and lifted him high in the air. You! The clown looked at Peter in horror, his eyes filled with disbelief. I told you, you're the toy. Peter's voice was cold and ruthless. He tightened his grip, and the clown's neck snapped with a crisp sound. The clown's body slumped down, lifeless. Peter tossed aside the clown's corpse and looked down at the wound on his chest. The wound was healing at a visible speed. The feeling of being invincible is truly captivating, Peter muttered to himself, a bloodthirsty smile playing on his lips. He looked up at the sky, his eyes gleaming with fervent light. This world is mine now. Suddenly, Peter sensed an even more powerful aura rapidly approaching. Peter smiled dismissively. The wound on his chest had completely healed, leaving not even a scar. That's it, he muttered, his tone full of disdain. This newly emerged aura, though powerful, was nothing more than a slightly larger ant to him. The owner of this aura was a woman dressed in a black bodysuit, her long, fiery red hair flying through the air like burning flames. She hovered in the air, looking down at Peter, her eyes icy cold like millennia-old ice. "You are Peter?" Her voice was like colliding ice crystals, crisp and chilling. "It's me," Peter replied arrogantly without even glancing up at her, continuing to fidget with his fingers as if utterly uninterested in the formidable enemy before him. This arrogance wasn't feigned, it was genuine. He truly didn't care. "You killed the Joker." The woman's tone was flat yet carried an undeniable certainty. "So what?" Peter finally raised his head, his eyes full of defiance. "He was just an annoying fly, I just swatted him dead." The woman was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "You are arrogant." "Arrogant? No, I'm just stating the facts." Peter shrugged, looking nonchalant. "Are you here to die too?" The woman didn't answer but slowly raised her right hand. A powerful energy gathered in her palm, forming a dazzling energy ball. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. Peter laughed, a laugh filled with sarcasm. "Regret? That word doesn't exist in my dictionary." He stretched out his right hand and a powerful energy gathered in it, more violent and unrestrained than the woman's energy ball, like a volcano about to erupt, requesting flowers. The two energies collided, producing a deafening explosion. The shockwave swept across the surrounding area, leveling the nearby buildings. After the explosion, smoke and dust filled the air, obscuring the sky. Peter slowly emerged from the smoke and dust, completely unharmed. The woman was thrown back by the shockwave of the explosion, crashing heavily to the ground and spitting blood. "That's it." Peter walked up to the woman, looking down at her with disdain. "Is this what you call strength?" The woman struggled to stand up but found herself completely unable to move. She looked up at Peter, her eyes filled with resentment and anger. What kind of monster are you?" she asked with difficulty. Peter laughed, a laugh filled with arrogance and bloodlust. "Monster? No, I am God." He raised his foot and stomped hard on the woman's chest, making a crisp crack sound as her ribs snapped. "Ah!" the woman screamed in agony. Peter ignored the woman's pain and instead stomped down even harder. "Please." The woman managed to utter a few words. "Beg me? What right do you have to beg me?" Peter's tone was cold and ruthless. He applied force with his hand and the woman's sternum shattered completely. The woman stopped struggling, her eyes lost their light and she was lifeless. Peter withdrew his foot, glanced down at the woman's corpse at his feet, and a bloodthirsty smile crept across his lips. "Who's next?" He looked up at the sky, his eyes gleaming with fervent light. "This world belongs to 363 now." Suddenly, Peter sensed an even more powerful aura rapidly approaching. This aura was several times, even dozens of times, stronger than the one from the previous woman. Peter frowned, a sense of unease rising within him for the first time. This aura filled him with fear. "Interesting." Peter licked his lips, his eyes gleaming with excitement. He hadn't felt this way in a long time, this sense of impending challenge. Who exactly is the owner of this aura? In the distant sky, a black dot gradually grew larger at an unbelievable speed. The black dot drew closer and closer, finally revealing its true form. That was a spaceship. The enormous spaceship blotted out the sky and slowly descended to the ground, emitting a deafening roar. The spaceship's hatch slowly opened and a figure stepped out. It was a giant over 2 meters tall with bulging muscles all over his body. He wore black armor, a ferocious helmet, and held a huge battle axe in his hand, exuding a terrifying, murderous aura. The giant walked up to Peter, looked down at him, and said in a deep voice, "You are Peter." Peter looked up at the giant before him, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. "It's me. I'm here to kill you." The giant raised his battle axe and pointed it at Peter. Peter laughed, a laugh filled with excitement and madness. "Come on, let me see what you've got. An earth-shattering battle is about to begin." Peter smiled dismissively, showing no fear in the face of the giant's threat. He cracked his neck, the sound of his bones rubbing together jarring in the silent air. "Kill me. Try me." The giant roared, his battle axe cleaving towards Peter with the force to split mountains and shatter rocks. Peter neither dodged nor flinched but simply extended his right hand and effortlessly caught the giant's axe. "Is that all the strength you've got?" Peter scoffed, and with a slight increase in force he crushed the giant's battle axe in his hand. The giant stared in disbelief at the sight, his eyes filled with terror. He had never witnessed such power. Peter punched the giant in the chest, shattering the giant's armor instantly. The giant was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing heavily to the ground, his fate unknown. Seeing this, the other passengers on the spaceship rushed out and attacked Peter. 014501427 Chinese letter 193,560,520. Lasers, missiles, energy cannons. All sorts of attacks rained down on Peter. Peter stood still, letting the attacks rain down on him. The flames of the explosions engulfed him and smoke and dust filled the air, blotting out the sun. However, when the smoke cleared, Peter's 5.2 figure reappeared before everyone, completely unharmed. Too weak, Peter laughed loudly, his laughter filled with disdain and arrogance. This is what you call technological power, utterly pathetic. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of an alien warrior, throwing a punch that shattered the alien war king's head. Blood, brain matter, and broken bones splattered all over Peter. Peter, however, paid no heed. Instead, he stuck out his tongue, licked the blood from his lips, and revealed a bloodthirsty smile. Tastes good. He slaughtered the alien warriors with unbridled abandon, like a tiger among sheep. Screams, wails, and explosions mingled together, creating a symphony of death. In just a few minutes, hundreds of alien warriors fell at Peter's feet, none of them surviving. Peter stood amidst the mountains of corpses and seas of blood, roaring to the sky, unleashing the rage and bloodlust within him. "Who else?" he roared, his voice shaking the heavens and the earth. Only deathly silence answered him. Peter glanced around, a hint of disappointment flashing in his eyes. Boring. He turned and walked toward the spaceship, intending to claim it for himself. Just then, a voice suddenly came from inside the spaceship. "You are very strong." Peter stopped and looked at the spaceship. The spaceship's hatch slowly opened and a figure stepped out. That was a woman, a tall, beautiful woman. She wore a black bodysuit that perfectly showcased her figure. Her long, fiery red hair cascaded down like a waterfall, and her 10 emerald green eyes shone with a mesmerizing light like jewels. Peter looked at the woman before him, a hint of amazement flashing in his eyes. He hadn't seen such a beautiful woman in a long time. "Who are you?" Peter asked. "My name is Lilith," the woman replied, her voice as beautiful as heavenly music. Lilith, Peter repeated the name, a strange light gleaming in his eyes. A beautiful name. "You are very strong too." Lilith looked at Peter, her eyes filled with admiration. "I have never seen a man as strong as you." "Really?" Peter laughed, his laughter filled with confidence and arrogance. "That's nothing, I can get even stronger." Oh, Lilith looked at Peter with interest. "I'm looking forward to it." "You'll see," Peter said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. He walked up to Lilith, reached out and gently stroked her cheek. "You are beautiful." Lilith didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes and enjoyed Peter's caresses. "You are very attractive too," Lilith said, her voice full of seduction. Peter lowered his head and kissed Lilith's lips, an aggressive kiss. Lilith responded passionately to Peter's kiss, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. Amidst mountains of corpses and seas of blood, the two embraced passionately. 014501427 Feilu 193,570,230. The air was thick with the smell of blood and the smell of lust. After a long while their lips parted. Peter looked at Lilith, his eyes filled with possessiveness. "You are mine now." Lilith laughed, a laugh filled with allure and seduction. "I have always been yours." Peter picked up Lilith and carried her toward the Cosmos 670 spaceship. He was prepared to conquer this world together with Lilith. Just then, a red light suddenly lit up on the spaceship's control panel, accompanied by a piercing alarm. "Warning, warning, high-energy reaction detected, explosion imminent." Peter's expression changed, and he quickly put Lilith down and turned to look out the spaceship window. In the distance, a massive fireball was hurtling toward them at an astonishing speed. "Damn it!" Peter cursed under his breath, a sense of foreboding rising within him. "This energy is even more powerful than that previous giant. Who is it?" "Who on earth is it?" Peter shoved Lilith aside, his red cloak fluttering behind him like a blood-red banner rising from hell. "Damn it, which fool is getting in my way again?" Lilith stumbled slightly from the push, a hint of displeasure flashing in her eyes, but she quickly regained her charming smile. "Darling, be careful, don't hurt me," she said coquettishly, her voice as sweet as honey. Peter ignored Lilith, his eyes fixed on the approaching fireball in the sky. The powerful energy fluctuations sent a chill down his spine. This energy even surpassed that of the giant alien warrior he had previously blasted apart with a single punch. Boom. The fireball struck the ground with a deafening roar, and the shockwave leveled everything around it. As the smoke cleared, a gigantic figure appeared before Peter. It was a giant over 100 meters tall, engulfed in raging flames like a demon emerging from hell. He wielded a massive battle axe radiating a suffocating aura of power. "Who are you?" Peter shouted, his voice filled with anger and vigilance. The giant slowly raised his head, his eyes burning with flames as he stared at Peter, uttering a deep, hoarse voice. "I am the king of the Balrog. I have come to take your life." "Take my life?" Peter sneered, his eyes filled with disdain. "You think you can take my life?" "Arrogant," the Balrog king roared, raising his battle axe and bringing it down fiercely on Peter. The battle axe sliced through the air, creating a gust of wind that seemed to tear the entire space apart. Peter didn't dodge or evade. A glint of madness flashed in his eyes as he actually reached out and grabbed the blade of the battle axe. "What?" The Fire Demon King was shocked. He hadn't expected Peter to be able to catch his attack with his bare hands. Peter gripped the axe blade tightly, and a powerful force erupted from his body, managing to stop the axe in midair. "Is that all the power you have?" Peter scoffed, his eyes filled with contempt. "Roar!" The Flame Demon King roared, exerting his strength once more, trying to chop down with his battle axe. However, Peter's strength was even greater. With a sudden burst of power, he snatched the battle axe directly from the Balrog King's hand. "Now it's my turn," Peter sneered, raising his battle axe and bringing it down hard on the Balrog King's head. "Vda!" The battle axe ripped through the skin of the Flame Demon King and blood gushed out like a fountain. "Ah!" The Flame Demon King let out a miserable cry, his huge body swayed and he almost fell to the ground. Peter did not stop. He swung his battle axe and attacked the Balrog King again and again. PFFT. Blood splattered, staining the earth red. The Flame Demon King's body was covered in wounds, blood was flowing continuously, and his breath was getting weaker and weaker. "Impossible, how could you be so strong?" the Flame Demon King said weakly, his eyes filled with fear and despair. "Because I am invincible," Peter laughed wildly, his eyes flashing with bloodlust. He raised his battle axe high, preparing to deliver the final blow to the Fire Demon King. Lilai Ajo. Just then, Lilith suddenly appeared behind Peter and hugged his waist tightly with both hands. "Darling, don't kill him," Lilith said softly, her voice full of seduction. Peter stopped moving, turned to look at Lilith, a hint of confusion in his eyes. "Why?" "Because he's mine." Lilith smiled alluringly, a sly glint in her eyes. Peter looked at Lilith, a hint of amusement flashing in his eyes. "Oh. Your patrol?" "Yes," Lilith nodded, her eyes filled with confidence. "He is my pet." "A pet?" Peter looked at Lilith with interest. "Interesting." He put down his battle axe, looked at the dying Flame Demon King, and a wicked smile curled at the corner of his mouth. "Since he's your pet, then you can deal with him as you see fit." Lilith walked up to the Balrog King, extended her slender fingers and gently stroked his cheek. "Good girl from now on." "You'll be with me?" Lilith said softly, her voice like a lover's whisper. The Fire Demon King looked at Lilith, his eyes filled with fear and submission. He nodded slowly like an obedient pet. Lilith smiled contentedly, then turned to Peter, her eyes filled with provocation. "Darling, what do you think of my pet?" Peter looked at Lilith, a hint of admiration flashing in his eyes. "Very good." He walked up to Lilith, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her lips. A kiss filled with aggression and possessiveness. Lilith responded passionately to Peter's kiss, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. Amidst mountains of corpses and seas of blood, the two embraced and kissed passionately. Suddenly, Peter felt a powerful energy surge erupt from Lilith's body. He shoved Lilith away abruptly, his eyes filled with shock. "Arg!" Lilith looked at Peter, a sly glint in her eyes. "Darling, you've been tricked." She stretched out her right hand, and a ball of black energy condensed in her hand, forming a black sphere. "Goodbye, my toy," Zhuozhuosi sneered, tossing the black sphere in her hand toward Peter. The black sphere flew toward Peter at an astonishing speed, and the powerful energy fluctuations made Peter feel a pang of fear. He tried to dodge, but it was too late. Boom. The black sphere rapidly expanded before Peter's eyes, its destructive energy sending chills down his spine. Invincible. Before this be ***ch, his invincibility seemed a joke. Anger, humiliation, disbelief, emotions churned within him, threatening to tear him apart. But Peter is Peter after all. At the critical moment, a cold smile crept onto his lips. Lilith thinks she can take him down like this? How naive. He did not try to dodge, but instead stretched out his right hand, fingers spread, to meet the black sphere. Boom! The explosion was deafening, and the shockwave swept in all directions, uprooting the surrounding trees and creating a huge crater in the ground. As the smoke cleared, Lilith smiled smugly as if she could already see Peter blown to pieces. However, when she saw what was before her, her smile froze on her face. Peter remained standing there, unharmed. He held the black energy ball in his right hand as casually as if it were a toy. That's it, Peter glanced at Lilith with disdain, his tone full of contempt. Is this what you call goodbye? Lilith's face turned deathly pale, her eyes filled with disbelief. How could this be? This was her trump card, the ultimate move containing all her power, and she caught it so easily. Peter felt a surge of pleasure seeing Lilith's terrified expression. He slowly walked up to her, looking down at her as if she were a lamb to the slaughter. Who do you think I am? Peter's tone was icy, like a demon from hell. I am Peter, the invincible Peter. He suddenly crushed the black energy ball in his hand, and the black energy dissipated into the air. Now, it's my turn. A bloodthirsty glint flashed in Peter's eyes. He grabbed Lilith's hair and slammed her violently to the ground. Ah! Lilith screamed, feeling as if her bones were about to fall apart. Ignoring Lilith's pain, Peter raised his foot and stomped hard on Lilith's face. Don't you enjoy toying with others? Peter's tone was full of sarcasm. Now you'll experience what it's like to be toyed with. He pressed hard on Lilith's face, listening to her painful groans, and felt a surge of pleasure. Please, please let me go. Lilith managed to utter a few words, her eyes filled with fear and despair. Peter sneered, showing no pity whatsoever. Let you go, Peter repeated Lilith's words, his tone full of mockery. You think I'd let you go so easily? He bent down, leaned close to Lilith's ear, and whispered, I'm going to make you wish you were dead. Peter released his foot, grabbed Lilith by the collar, and lifted her up. You know what? Peter looked at Lilith, a crazed glint in his eyes. I love seeing people in despair. He threw Lilith to the ground and then stomped on her chest. Cough, cough, Lilith coughed violently, feeling as if her chest was about to be crushed. Peter felt a sense of satisfaction as he looked at Lilith's pained expression. Now tell me, Peter's tone was icy, like a demon from hell, what other cards do you have up your sleeve? Lilith struggled to lift her head and looked at Peter, her eyes filled with fear and despair. I didn't, Lilith said weakly, her voice trembling. Peter sneered, clearly not believing Lilith's words. Really? Peter's tone was full of threat. You'd better not lie to me. He increased the pressure on his foot, and Lilith let out a painful groan. I really didn't, Lilith repeated with difficulty, feeling her consciousness beginning to fade. Peter looked at Lilith's dying state and suddenly felt a sense of weariness. He released his foot, turned, and left, leaving Lilith alone lying in a pool of blood. Requesting flowers, how boring, Peter muttered to himself as he walked away. I thought you were going to have some surprise in store for me. He walked to a tree, sat down against the trunk, closed his eyes, and began to rest. Suddenly, he sensed a powerful energy fluctuation coming from afar. He suddenly opened his eyes, looking in the direction from which the energy fluctuations were coming, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. 014501427 Chinese letter 193,590,100. This energy, Peter murmured to himself, could it be? He stood up and walked towards the direction from which the energy fluctuations came, a wicked smile playing on his lips. It seems things are getting interesting. Peter walked towards the direction from which the energy fluctuations originated. The trees along the way trembled under the pressure of his powerful aura, as if in fear of something. The smile on his lips grew increasingly sinister, as if he had already foreseen what interesting things were about to happen. The energy fluctuations grew increasingly intense, and Peter arrived at an open space. In the center of the open space, a figure clad in a black cloak hovered in midair. The cloak obscured his face, making his expression impossible to discern, but judging from the powerful energy emanating from him, he was clearly no ordinary individual. "Who is it?" Peter stopped in his tracks, a hint of amusement in his voice. The man in the black cloak slowly turned around, revealing his true face. It was a handsome face, but his eyes were filled with indifference and murderous intent. "Peter, we meet again," the man in the black cloak said coldly. Peter was slightly taken aback, then smiled and said, "It's you, I thought it was someone else." "You know me?" the man in the black 827 cloak asked, somewhat surprised. "Of course," Peter said dismissively. "Do you think I would forget those ants who once challenged me?" The man in the black cloak's face darkened. He snorted coldly and said, "Peter, you're too arrogant. Today I'll make you pay the price." "Oh, is that so?" A hint of amusement flashed in Peter's eyes. "I'm looking forward to it." The man in the black cloak stopped talking and clasped his hands together. A powerful energy surge erupted from his body, distorting the surrounding air. "This is—" Peter looked at the black-cloaked man's movements, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. "This is my strongest power," the black-cloaked man roared, thrusting his hands forward and shooting a beam of black energy towards Peter. Peter remained calm. He extended a finger and gently touched the black energy beam, which was then blocked. "Is that all you've got?" Peter's tone was full of sarcasm. The man in the black cloak's expression changed drastically. He hadn't expected Peter to block his attack so easily. "Impossible," the man in the black cloak said incredulously. "Nothing is impossible," Peter said confidently, "because I am invincible." Peter flashed and instantly appeared in front of the man in the black cloak, throwing a punch. The man in the black cloak had no time to react before Peter punched him, sending him flying backward and crashing heavily to the ground. "Cough, cough," the man in the black cloak coughed violently, blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. Peter slowly walked up to the man in the black cloak, looking down at him as if he were a lamb to the slaughter. You, the man in the black cloak struggled to raise his head, looking at Peter with eyes filled with fear and despair. "Now, do you know how powerful I am?" Peter's tone was icy, like a demon from hell. The man in the black cloak trembled as he said, I was wrong, please, let me go." Peter sneered, showing no pity whatsoever. "Let you go," Peter repeated the black-cloaked man's words, his tone full of mockery. "Do you think I'd let you go so easily?" He raised his foot and stomped hard on the black-cloaked man's chest. 014501427 Chinese letter 193,590,430. "Ah!" the man in the black cloak screamed, feeling as if his chest was about to be crushed. Peter pressed hard on the black-cloaked man's chest, listening to his painful groans, and felt a surge of pleasure. "Please, please," the black-cloaked figure managed to utter, his eyes filled with fear and despair. Peter ignored the black-cloaked man's pleas for mercy and continued to press hard on his chest until he stopped breathing completely. "How boring!" Peter released his foot, turned and left, leaving the black-cloaked man's corpse lying there. As he walked, he muttered to himself, "I thought you were going to have some kind of surprise." Suddenly, he sensed an even more powerful energy fluctuation coming from afar. He abruptly stopped and looked in the direction from which the energy fluctuations were coming, a hint of surprise and excitement flashing in his eyes. "This energy is much stronger than that guy's," Peter muttered to himself. "It seems the real game has only just begun." A wicked smile curled at the corner of his lips as he walked toward the direction from which the energy fluctuations were coming, his figure gradually disappearing into the night. Where does this new energy fluctuation come from, and what challenges will Peter face? Peter followed the energy fluctuations. The night was deep, and the shadows of the roadside trees stretched long and twisted behind him like the claws of a monster. He didn't quicken his pace, continuing his leisurely stroll, as if this powerful energy fluctuation was nothing more than a dessert after a meal. 27. The source of the energy was in an abandoned factory. Peter went inside. It was empty and eerily quiet, filled only with the wreckage of machines and scattered dust. A strange smell permeated the air, like the smell of corroded metal mixed with the scent of some kind of creature. In the center of the factory, a huge metal sphere floats in the air, radiating a dazzling light, and the powerful energy fluctuations emanate from it. The metal sphere slowly opened and a figure stepped out. It was a woman, tall and slender, wearing a tight-fitting outfit, her long, fiery red hair dancing like flames. A metal mask concealed her expression, but from her exposed chin and lips, it was clear she was an extremely beautiful woman. "You're Peter?" The woman's voice was cold and mechanical, devoid of any emotion. "That's right," Peter said, scrutinizing the woman with interest. "And who are you?" "I am an Omega," the woman said calmly. "I have been ordered to take your life." "Take my life?" Peter laughed, his laughter filled with disdain. "You think you can take it? I know you are strong," Omega's voice remained calm, "but you cannot defeat me." "Oh really?" Peter raised an eyebrow. "I'm looking forward to it." Omega didn't say anything more. She flashed and instantly appeared in front of Peter, raising her hand. Peter neither dodged nor flinched and met the punch head-on. The two fists collided, producing a loud bang, and the powerful shockwave sent the surrounding machine debris flying. Peter remained motionless while Omega took a few steps back. "Interesting," Peter said, a hint of excitement in his eyes. "Looks like you're much better than that guy from before." Omega didn't speak. She charged forward again, this time faster and stronger. Peter became serious. He stopped being arrogant and began to give it his all. The two engaged in a fierce battle in the factory, their fists and feet clashing, creating a deafening roar that made the entire factory seem as if they were about to tear it apart. Omega's attacks were fierce and swift, each punch carrying devastating power, but Peter always managed to dodge them easily. He was faster and stronger than Omega, so Omega's attacks posed no threat to him at all. "Your strength is very strong," Omega said, panting, a look of surprise on her face. "You're not bad either," Peter said casually, but it wasn't enough. He flashed behind Omega and slapped her on the back. Omega groaned and flew out, crashing heavily to the ground. Peter slowly walked up to Omega, looking down at her. "Now you know how powerful I am." Omega struggled to lift her head, looking at Peter with eyes filled with resentment and anger. I won't lose," she said through gritted teeth. Peter laughed, a laugh full of sarcasm. "You've already lost," he said calmly. "Now tell me who sent you." Omega remained silent about this unanswered question. Peter wasn't in a hurry, he patiently waited for Omega's reply. Time passed second by second and Omega remained silent. Peter grew impatient and stepped on Omega's chest. "Ah!" Omega screamed in agony, feeling as if his chest was about to be crushed. "Tell me," Peter's tone was icy like a demon from hell, "who sent you?" Omega remained silent, biting her lip, refusing to reveal the name of the mastermind behind it all. Peter increased the pressure on his foot and Omega's pain intensified. I'll say it." Omega finally couldn't hold back any longer and she said with difficulty, "Yes, yes." Just then the factory gate was suddenly kicked open, and a group of people in black uniforms rushed in. They were armed with various weapons and pointed them at Peter. "Don't move!" shouted the leader of the group. Peter looked up at the newcomer, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. "Who are you?" "We are Task Force X," the man said coldly. "We are here to arrest you." Peter laughed, his laughter filled with disdain. "Arrest me," he repeated the man's words, his tone full of mockery. "You think you can?" He looked at Omega and asked, "Did you call these people here too?" Omega shook his head and said, "I don't know who they are." Peter's gaze returned to Task Force X, a wicked smile playing on his lips. "It seems things are getting more and more interesting." Peter laughed, a laugh tinged with contempt and amusement, as if the arrival of Task Force X was not a threat but rather a carefully prepared entertainment show for him. "Arrest me? With this bunch of trash?" He glanced around, his eyes scanning a group of lambs to the slaughter. The X-Team leader frowned, annoyed by Peter's arrogance. He had seen many vicious criminals, but few were as brazen as Peter. "Peter, you are suspected of multiple acts of violent assault and vandalism. Surrender now, and you may receive leniency." "Merciful treatment?" Peter laughed so hard he almost fell over as if he'd heard a joke. "Do you know who I am? I'm Peter, the invincible Peter. What leniency do I need from you?" Before he could finish speaking, his figure had already vanished from the spot. Before Task Force X could react, they heard the sound of bones cracking, followed by several screams. Several team members were already lying on the ground, groaning in pain. "Damn it!" the captain roared, raising his energy gun and firing wildly in the direction Peter had disappeared. Blue energy beams flew wildly through the factory, riddling the walls and machines with holes, but they didn't even touch the hem of Peter's clothes. Peter moved through Task Force X like a ghost, each strike swift and decisive. He didn't care about their lives. In his eyes they were nothing more than troublesome ants, easily crushed. With a flick of his wrist, Omega lay on the ground, gazing at the scene before her that resembled a battlefield, her heart filled with terror. She had thought herself powerful enough, but compared to Peter she was like a tiny ant, utterly vulnerable. After Peter had taken care of most of the Task Force X members, he strolled up to the captain, looking down at him. "Now do you still think you can arrest me?" The captain was pale, and the energy gun in his hand fell limply to his side. He knew he was finished, completely finished. Peter reached out, grabbed the captain by the neck and lifted him up. "Tell me who sent you." The captain gasped for breath, his eyes filled with terror. It's the government." "The government?" Peter sneered. "The government dares to provoke the 94th machine gun. Looks like they're asking for trouble." He tightened his grip and the captain's neck cracked with a crisp sound before collapsing and dying. Peter casually tossed the captain's body to the ground and turned to Omega. "Now it's your turn." Omega trembled all over. She knew what was about to happen. She closed her eyes, awaiting death. However, the expected pain did not come. She opened her eyes and found Peter watching her with great interest. "You're smart," Peter said. "You didn't foolishly rebel against me like the others." Omega was stunned. She didn't understand what Peter CHBH meant. "I'm giving you a chance," Peter continued, "to submit to me and serve me." Omega hesitated. She knew that if she refused, she would surely die, but if she submitted, it would mean betraying her organization and her beliefs. "What, you don't want to?" Peter's tone turned icy. "Then die." He raised his hand, ready to finish off the Omega. I do," the Omega cried out hastily. Peter lowered his hand, a smile returning to his face. "Very good, a wise choice." He walked up to the Omega, knelt down and looked into her eyes. "From this moment on, you belong to me." Omega lowered her head, unable to meet Peter's gaze. She knew that her life had been completely changed. Peter stood up, looked around, and felt a wave of disgust at the sight of corpses and remains scattered everywhere. "Clean this up," he said to Omega, "and then come with me." Omega nodded and began cleaning up the scene. Peter turned and left the factory, his figure disappearing into the night. Omega stared in the direction Peter had left, her eyes filled with complex emotions. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew there was no turning back. Peter walked along the deserted streets feeling cheerful. The appearance of Task Force X was just a minor incident for him and did not affect his mood. He looked up at the night sky, a wicked smile playing on his lips. "This world is entirely mine." Suddenly he stopped and looked ahead. A figure appeared in his line of sight, a woman with a hot figure wearing a black bodysuit. The woman slowly walked up to Peter, removed her mask, and revealed a stunningly beautiful face. "Peter," the woman said, her voice like heavenly music, "it's been a long time." Peter looked at the woman before him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "It's you." The woman smiled, a captivating and alluring smile. "You didn't expect this, did you? We meet again." Peter looked at the woman in front of him and a bad feeling suddenly welled up in his heart. What brings you here?" The woman did not answer but slowly reached out and stroked Peter's cheek. "You know, Peter," the woman said softly, "I've missed you so much." Peter looked at the woman before him, feeling his body growing hotter and his breathing becoming more rapid. He tried to push the woman away but found himself unable to move at all. The woman's hand slid down his cheek and rested on his neck. "Peter," the woman spoke again, her voice full of seduction, "let me cherish you." Peter felt his consciousness fading and he tried to struggle, but he was powerless to resist. He closed his eyes and let the woman do as she pleased. The woman looked at Peter with a victorious smile on her face. "Finally, you're mine again." Peter felt a wave of dizziness. The woman's scent made him lose his senses. He wanted to resist, but the power within him was like a sleeping beast, impossible to awaken. The feeling was so familiar yet so strange, like a meticulously woven trap. He knew the danger but was powerless to escape. The woman's lips brushed close to his ear, her breath sweet as orchids. "Don't be nervous, Peter, I just want you to relax." Her voice was as smooth as silk yet carried a subtle hint of chill. Who are you?" Peter managed to squeeze out a few words, his voice hoarse and weak. The woman chuckled softly, her fingertips tracing the outline of his guitar. "And you?" Countless thoughts flashed through Peter's mind. Suicide Squad. The Justice League, or her, the woman he thought had long since vanished from his life. "What exactly do you want?" Peter asked again, his tone tinged with panic. The woman didn't answer but instead pressed her body tightly against his. Peter could feel the softness and warmth of her body, which made him even more uneasy. "You," Peter was about to speak when he felt his lips being sealed. The woman's kiss was as fierce as a storm, with a hint of aggression and possessiveness. Peter's mind went blank, he felt his body gradually losing control. He tried to push the woman away but found he couldn't muster any strength at all. After what seemed like an eternity, the woman finally released him. Peter gasped for breath, feeling as if he had been pulled from the water, utterly exhausted. "You," Peter tried to speak but found his voice was terribly hoarse. The woman chuckled softly, gently tracing his lips with her finger. "How was it?" "My kiss wasn't it." Peter didn't answer, he just stared at her coldly. "Don't look at me like that, Peter," the woman said. "I just wanted to cheer you up." Happy? Peter sneered. "You've done this to me, and you say it's to make me happy." "Ugh, aren't you happy?" the woman retorted, her tone laced with provocation. Peter didn't speak, he just clenched his fists tightly. "All right, Peter," the woman said. "It's getting late, I should go." She stood up, straightened her clothes, and then turned and left the room. Peter watched the woman's departing figure, his eyes filled with complex emotions. He didn't know who this woman was nor why she had done this, but he knew he couldn't continue like this. He must regain his strength as soon as possible, then find this woman and make her pay. Peter took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. He sat cross-legged on the ground and began to circulate his internal energy. 014501427 Chinese letter 203,010,520. A powerful force surged from his body, making him feel full of power. He slowly opened his eyes, a glint of light flashing in them. "I'm back," Peter whispered. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the night outside. "Just wait, I'll be back," Peter vowed silently to himself. He turned and left the room, disappearing into the night. Peter reappeared on the street, the night wind ruffling his hair and sending a chill through him. He needed a place to think things through and sort out his current situation. This mysterious woman's appearance was no accident. Her understanding of him and her eerie control made him uneasy. He wandered aimlessly until he came to a 24-hour coffee shop. As he pushed open the door, a warm current mixed with the aroma of coffee wafted out, which relaxed his tense nerves a little. He found a corner seat and ordered a black coffee. The bitterness of the coffee spread in his mouth, but unexpectedly it made him feel a little more awake. He began to recall every detail of his interactions with the woman, her eyes, her smile, her touch. Each detail was like a thorn, deeply embedded in his heart. He suddenly remembered that the woman had whispered a name in his ear, Siren. The name sent a chill down his spine. In Greek mythology, the sirens are the names of sea monsters who lure sailors with their beautiful songs, causing ships to run aground and sink. Could this woman also be a siren? This thought made him even more uneasy. If that were the case, then what exactly was her purpose? Peter's thoughts became increasingly chaotic. He felt as if he had fallen into a giant maze and could not find his way out. Just then, a news report suddenly came on the store's TV. "Breaking news! Just now, Stark Tower in the city center was attacked by unidentified assailants. The extent of casualties is currently unknown." Peter jerked his head up, a flicker of shock in his eyes. "Stark Tower? That's the headquarters of Iron Man, Tony Stark, XT-1EBF. A bad feeling suddenly welled up in Peter's heart. He immediately got up and rushed out of the coffee shop. He had to get to Stark Tower as soon as possible to see what had happened. Peter arrived at Stark Tower at lightning speed, and the sight before him shocked him. The once glorious Stark Tower is now a ruin, engulfed in flames, billowing smoke, and filled with a pungent odor. Wounded people were everywhere. Their cries and groans mingled together, creating a scene of hell on earth. Peter's fist clenched tightly and the force rolled into his flesh. Who did it? He looked around, searching for any trace of the attacker. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure emerge from the ruins. That woman, she was still wearing that black bodysuit with a wicked smile on her face. "You," Peter said through gritted teeth, "did you do it?" The woman chuckled softly but did not answer. "Why did you do this?" Peter roared. "Why?" The woman repeated his words, "Because I like 2.2. You." Peter was furious. He rushed towards the woman and punched her. The woman dodged Peter's attack with a swift movement. "Don't waste your energy, Peter," the woman said. "You are no match for me." "Is that so?" Peter sneered. "Then let's see." He charged at the woman again, this time faster and stronger. However, the woman easily dodged his attack. "I told you you are no match for me," the woman said. "Give up." Peter didn't say anything, he just continued attacking the woman. He was evaded by women time and time again, but he did not give up. He knew he couldn't afford to lose, he must defeat this woman and avenge those innocent victims. Just then, the woman suddenly stopped and turned to face Peter. "Fine," the woman said, "since you're so eager to die, then I'll grant your wish." She slowly stretched out her hand, and a powerful energy surged from it. Peter felt an immense pressure bearing down on him. He felt like prey trapped in a spider's web, unable to move. "Goodbye, Peter," the woman said. "In your next life, remember to stay away from me." She suddenly thrust the energy in her hand towards Peter. The energy wave surged towards Peter, but he felt no excruciating pain as he had expected. Time seemed to freeze, the energy stagnated before him like a thin, eerily glowing barrier. Peter raised an eyebrow, a smug smile spreading across his lips. "That's it." The woman froze, she had never seen anything like it. She increased her energy output, causing the energy waves to tremble violently, but she still couldn't break through the invisible barrier. "This is impossible," she exclaimed, her eyes filled with disbelief. Peter reached out a finger and gently touched the energy barrier. The barrier rippled like water before vanishing without a trace. "Nothing is impossible," Peter said arrogantly. "You're too weak." The woman turned pale, she realized she had kicked a hornet's nest. This man was far stronger than she had imagined. Fear began to creep into her heart and she instinctively wanted to back away. But he found that his legs felt as heavy as if they were filled with lead. Peter walked towards her step by step, each step feeling like it was pounding on her heart, making it increasingly difficult for her to breathe. "Now it's my turn." A cruel smile curled at the corner of his lips. He suddenly threw a punch, hitting the woman squarely in the stomach. The woman let out a painful groan, her body flying backward like a kite with a broken string, crashing heavily into the ruins. Peter didn't stop there, he walked up to the woman and looked down at her. "Tell me who sent you." The woman was curled up on the ground, coughing painfully, a trickle of blood escaping from the corner of her mouth. I can't say." Peter sneered and stepped on the woman's chest. "Won't talk, then die." "Wait," the woman cried out in terror. I'll talk. I was sent by Hydra," the woman said haltingly. They want Stark's techniques." "Hydra?" A chill flashed in Peter's eyes. "It seems they haven't learned their lesson." He withdrew his foot and turned to look at the burning Stark Tower. "Tony Stark, you owe me a favor." Peter left the ruins, leaving the woman alone, groaning in agony. He didn't kill her because he knew she would still be useful. Peter returned to his apartment, took a shower and changed his clothes. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the brightly lit city skyline. "Hydra," he muttered to himself, "looks like I need to stretch my muscles." His phone suddenly rang. It was Tony Stark calling. "Peter, did you do it?" Tony Stark's voice sounded tired. "It's me," Peter admitted without hesitation. "Thanks, buddy," Tony Stark said. "You saved my life this time." "You're welcome," Peter said arrogantly. "I just don't want my city to be destroyed." "Anyway, I still want to thank you," Tony Stark said. "What reward would you like?" "A reward," Peter chuckled. "I don't need anything." "Really?" Tony Stark asked, somewhat surprised. "You saved my life." "I told you I don't need anything," Peter repeated. "However, if you really want to repay me, then help me find out what Hydra is up to." "No problem," Tony Stark readily agreed. "I'll tell you everything I know." "That's settled then." Peter hung up the phone, a meaningful smile playing on his lips. The next day, Peter received information about Hydra from Tony Stark. After reviewing the information, Peter's face darkened. "It seems Hydra's power is far greater than I imagined," he muttered to himself. "But that suits me just fine." He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, it's me," Peter said. "Get me a private jet ready, I'm going to Europe." "Yes, sir," came a respectful voice from the other end of the phone. MJU4 NDA20C3 Autumn 1 MZGX MTQ5 OJ M equals. Peter hung up the phone, walked to the wardrobe and began to choose clothes. He was going to Europe to meet the leader of Hydra. Peter arrived in a small European country by private plane. As soon as he got off the plane, he felt a chilling atmosphere. He knew that Hydra agents were already waiting for him here. He ignored those secretly watching him and headed straight for a luxury hotel. He booked a presidential suite and then took a nice, easy shower. After taking a shower, he changed into a black suit, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the city night view. "Hydra," he muttered to himself, "I'm here." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Peter walked to the door and opened it. A man in a black suit was standing outside the door. "Mr. Peter, our boss wants to see you," the man said. Peter sneered, "Lead the way." The man led Peter to the hotel's underground parking lot. A black sedan was parked there, the door opened and an elderly man in a black suit got out of the car. The old man said, "Who are you?" Peter asked. "I am the leader of Hydra. You can call me Baron Strucker," the old man said. "Baron Strucker," Peter repeated the name. "It seems you are the mastermind behind this." "That's right," Baron Strucker admitted. "I was the one who ordered the attack on Stark Tower." "Why?" Peter asked. "In order to obtain Stark's technology," Baron Strucker said. "With Stark's technology we can rule the world." "Rule the world?" Peter sneered. "With your abilities." "We have enough strength," Baron Strucker said. "And we also have you." "Me?" Peter raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Baron Strucker took a photograph out of his pocket and handed it to Peter. The photo shows a woman, the same woman who attacked Stark Tower. "Her name is Erica," Baron Strucker said. "She's your sister." Peter's expression changed instantly. Peter's expression changed, but not with the shock or sadness Baron Strucker had expected. Rather, it was a mocking, almost playful expression. "Sister, Baron Strucker, your storytelling skills are truly appalling. Do you think I'd believe such a clumsy trick?" Baron Strucker seemed to have anticipated Peter's reaction. He calmly took a USB drive from another pocket and placed it in Peter's hand. "Seeing is believing. This contains photos and videos of you and her from childhood to adulthood. Take a look for yourself." Peter took the USB drive but didn't examine it immediately. Instead, he gently twirled it between his thumb and forefinger as if weighing its weight or deep in thought. His sharp gaze swept over Baron Strucker, a cold smile curving his lips. "Baron Strucker, you think you can threaten me like this? You're too naive." "A threat? No, Mr. Peter, you misunderstand. I simply want to cooperate with you." Baron Strucker gave a fake smile. "Erica is important to you, isn't she? You wouldn't want anything to happen to her, would you?" "My patience is limited," Peter interrupted him impatiently, his tone carrying a hint of warning. "If you don't get to the point, I won't mind letting you experience what real pain is." Baron Strucker's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. "Very well, Mr. Peter, I'll be frank. We want you to join Hydra and rule the world with us." Peter suddenly burst into laughter, his laughter filled with disdain and mockery. "World domination? Baron Strucker, your ambition is truly admirable. However, you've chosen the wrong person. I have absolutely no interest in world domination." "I know you are powerful," Baron Strucker said unmoved, "but you alone cannot stand against the entire world. Join us and you will possess unlimited power and wealth." "Power, wealth?" Peter repeated the two words, a hint of sarcasm flashing in his eyes. "I don't need those, I already have everything I want." "Is that so?" Baron Strucker looked at him meaningfully. "Then what do you want?" Peter didn't answer but instead threw the USB drive back. "I'll give you a piece of advice, Baron Strucker, don't try to manipulate me with such despicable means again. Otherwise you'll face the consequences." After saying that, Peter turned and left without lingering. Baron Strucker watched Peter's departing figure, a sinister glint in his eyes. He picked up the USB drive, plugged it into the car's computer, and a photo of a little girl and a little boy appeared on the screen. The little girl had two pigtails and smiled innocently, while the little boy had a cold expression with a barely perceptible hint of disgust in his eyes. Peter, do you think you can escape the arrangements of fate? Baron Strucker muttered to himself. You are destined to be one of us. Back in the presidential suite, Peter didn't check the contents of the USB drive. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing down at the brightly lit city skyline, his eyes cold. He knew Baron Strucker wouldn't let this go, but that suited him perfectly. He needed a reason to completely destroy Hydra. Erica, Peter murmured the name, a complex emotion flashing in his eyes. He had never heard of having a sister, but Baron Strucker's words stirred a flicker of doubt within him. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. Find someone for me, Peter said, a woman named Erica who might be my sister. Yes, sir, came a respectful voice from the other end of the phone. After hanging up the phone, Peter walked to the liquor cabinet, poured himself a glass of whiskey and drank it all in one gulp. He needs to calm down and think carefully about what to do next. The next morning, Peter received information about Erica. According to the information, Erica is indeed his sister, and she was adopted by Hydra from a young age and trained to be a cold-blooded killer. After reviewing the information, Peter's expression grew even more somber. He hadn't expected that what Baron Strucker said was actually true. He dialed the number from yesterday again. Get me a helicopter, Peter said. I need to go to Hydra's base. Yes, sir. Peter hung up the phone, his eyes flashing with a cold light. He was going to Hydra's base to see his sister and to finally get rid of Hydra. Peter arrived at Hydra's secret base in the Alps by helicopter. Without hesitation, he stormed into the base, killing everyone who stood in his way. Finally, he arrived at the core area of the base where Erica was being held. Peter opened the cell door and saw a woman bound in chains. The woman raised her head, revealing a pale and haggard face. Her eyes were vacant, as if she had lost her soul. Erica, Peter called out tentatively. The woman didn't react. She just stared at him blankly. Peter stepped forward and unlocked her chains. Who are you? The woman finally spoke, her voice hoarse and weak. I am Peter, Peter said, your brother. The woman froze, a look of confusion flashing in her eyes. Brother, she repeated the word, seemingly unfamiliar with it. Yes, Peter said affirmatively, I am your brother. Suddenly, a fierce glint flashed in the woman's eyes, and she attacked Peter with a vengeance. Peter easily dodged her attack and subdued her with a counterattack. What are you doing? Peter asked. Are you here to kill me? The woman asked, her eyes filled with fear and hostility. No, Peter said, I've come to save you. The woman was stunned, a hint of doubt flashing in her eyes. Save me, she repeated the two words, seemingly unable to believe her ears. Yes, Peter said firmly, I'm here to save you. Peter looked at Erica, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He didn't know how to face his sister, who had been brainwashed by Hydra since childhood, nor how to convince her that he had truly come to save her. Point 0. Peter looked at Erica with a complex expression. This woman who shared his blood was like a frightened little animal full of hostility towards him. He sighed. He knew that Hydra's brainwashing couldn't be undone overnight. I know you're afraid, Peter said slowly, trying to be as gentle as possible, but you must believe me, I am not your enemy. Erica didn't speak but stared at him warily, her body tense, ready to attack again at any moment. I know you were trained by them from a young age and indoctrinated with all sorts of distorted ideas, Peter continued, but that's not your fault. You, Song, are their victim. Victim, Erica repeated the word, a hint of confusion flashing in her eyes. Peter said definitively, you are a victim. They stole your childhood, they stole your family, they stole everything from you. Erica's gaze began to waver, she seemed to be pondering Peter's words. Peter pressed his advantage, saying, I won't hurt you. I'm here to take you away from here, away from this hell that imprisons you. Erica fell silent. She looked down at her wrists, which were raw and chafed by the chains, and a hint of pain flashed in her eyes. Why? Erica finally spoke, her voice low and hoarse. Why did you save me? Because you are my sister, Peter said firmly. It is what I should do. Erica suddenly looked up, her eyes filled with shock. Sister, she murmured to herself, seemingly unable to believe her ears. Yes, Peter said again with certainty, we share the same blood. Baron Strucker, the one who imprisoned you, told me everything. Upon hearing Baron Strucker's name, Erica visibly trembled, a flicker of fear crossing her eyes. Don't be afraid, Peter reassured her, he is no longer a threat. He didn't tell her that Baron Ericastrak was dead for fear of upsetting her. Erica hesitated as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how to express it. I know it's hard for you to accept right now, Peter said understandingly, but that's okay, I can give you time. Peter reached out to touch Erica, but Erica instinctively pulled away. Peter's hand froze in midair. He gave a wry smile and withdrew his hand. It's all right, Peter said. I won't force you, I'll take you away from here first. Peter turned and walked toward the cell door. Wait, Erica suddenly called out to him. Peter turned around and looked at her. Are you really my brother? Erica asked, her voice trembling slightly. Yes, Peter answered again with certainty, I really am your brother. Erica was silent for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, I believe you. Peter smiled. It was the most beautiful thing he had heard all day. Let's go, Peter said, let's get out of here. Peter led Erica out of the cell, their path clear and unimpeded. Those Hydra lackeys were like paper in front of Peter, utterly defenseless. When they arrived outside the base, a helicopter was already waiting. Peter helped Erica onto the plane and then he got on himself. The helicopter took off and left this place filled with evil. On the plane, Erica kept looking at Peter, her eyes filled with complex emotions. Peter noticed her gaze, smiled and asked, What's wrong? It's nothing, Erica shook her head, it just feels like a dream. That won't happen again, Peter said, I will let you live a normal life. Erica didn't speak but simply looked quietly at the scenery outside the window. Peter knew it would take time for Erica to fully accept him, but he was confident he could make her feel the warmth of family again. After returning to her villa, Peter and Erica stayed there. It's safe here, Peter said. You can stay here without worry. Erica looked around, a hint of surprise flashing in her eyes. She had never seen such a luxurious residence. Thank you, Erica said softly. You're welcome, Peter smiled. You deserve it. Erica seemed to want to say something but then stopped. I know you have a lot of questions, Peter said, but right now what you need most is rest. Erica nodded, she was indeed very tired. In less than 10 minutes, all the men in black lay on the ground, their blood staining the lawn and filling the air with a strong stench of blood. Peter left the room and quietly closed the door. Peter smiled dismissively. That's all? Not even enough to fill his teeth. He pushed open the villa's door and stepped out. The men in black were clearly taken aback by Peter's initiative and were momentarily stunned. But they quickly recovered, raised their weapons, and charged at Peter. Kill him! The leader of the men in black roared. It's over, he said calmly. They came really fast, he muttered to himself, a disdainful smile playing on his lips. 27, Erica nodded gently. He sheathed his katana and turned to walk back to the villa. Peter led Erica to a guest room and said, You can stay here. Blood gushed out, and the man in black collapsed to the ground before he could even scream. Get some rest, Peter said. Just call me if you need anything. Peter moved with lightning speed, weaving effortlessly among the men in black. The katana seemed to come alive in his hands, each swing claiming a life. Erica walked into the room, looked at the soft bed, and a hint of longing flashed in her eyes. Peter sneered, and in a flash he disappeared from the spot. The next moment he appeared behind a man in black, his katana slicing through the air with effortless grace. Peter pushed open the door and came in. He went to the living room, poured himself a glass of wine, and drank it all in one gulp. He turned around and said to Erica behind him, Stay here, don't come out. More importantly, he knew Hydra wouldn't give up so easily. They would definitely try to get Erica back or take revenge on him. Hydra scum, Peter's voice was icy cold. Are you tired of living? Erica looked at Peter, her eyes filled with fear and awe. The piercing alarm shattered the villa's tranquility. Peter raised an eyebrow, his eyes flashing with even more coldness. He put down his wine glass, which clattered loudly on the table. He knew this was just the beginning. There was still a long way to go before Erica could truly integrate into normal life. Erica hid in the room, peeking through the crack in the door at everything that was happening outside. Although she hadn't witnessed Peter's fight firsthand, she could already imagine the bloody scene from the outcome. 014501427 Felu 203,370,300. Vda. Screams and roars mingled together, creating a symphony of death. Peter stepped out of the room and casually picked up a samurai sword hanging on the wall. The blade gleamed coldly in the lamplight as if yearning for the nourishment of blood. He walked to the window and drew back the heavy curtains. Under the cover of night, dozens of men in black were surging in from all directions on the villa's lawn, each carrying a weapon, clearly with ill intentions. Peter sneered, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Erica nodded somewhat fearfully. Although she didn't know what had happened, judging from Peter's expression and the commotion outside, it certainly wasn't anything good. Just then, the villa's alarm suddenly went off. He wanted to see who dared to come and die. Peter stood amidst the pile of corpses, his body spotless as if everything that had just happened had nothing to do with him. Did you kill them all?" she asked, trembling. Peter nodded. "They're just small fry, nothing to worry about." Erica fell silent. She knew Peter was strong, but she hadn't expected him to be this powerful. Who are you?" she couldn't help but ask. Peter walked up to her, gently stroked her hair and said, "I am your brother, Peter." Erica looked up into Peter's eyes. His gaze was gentle yet firm, which gave her a sense of reassurance. "I believe you," she whispered. Peter smiled and pulled her into his arms. "It's all right, it's all over now," he reassured her. "It's all in the past." Erica hugged Peter tightly, feeling his warmth. She knew she had finally found a safe haven. However, the peaceful life did not last long. He was about to close the door when suddenly a ticking sound came from the package. 14,501,427 Felu 203,380,000. Just then the doorbell rang. Peter went to the door and looked through the peephole. The deliveryman smiled and said, "Sir, your package is here, please sign for it." Peter abruptly threw the package onto the lawn. The ticking sound became even clearer after it hit the ground like the countdown to a time bomb. He knew this game would definitely not be easy. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Erica heard the noise and ran out of the room. He opened the door and asked, "Who are you?" Peter shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. A man in a deliveryman's uniform was standing outside the door, holding a package in his hand. Peter frowned, becoming even more wary. He sensed something was wrong with the package. "My God, whose child is this?" she asked. Time ticked by, and the ticking sound inside the package grew faster and more urgent, as if it were about to explode at any moment. Zhao slowly walked towards the package, reached out his hand, and carefully opened it. "Peter," a hoarse voice came from the other end of the phone, "long time no see." Peter took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to find out what was inside the package before it exploded. A rosy-cheeked baby is lying peacefully in its swaddle, fast asleep. It seems my peaceful life is about to be disrupted again. Peter recognized the voice and his face instantly darkened. A sense of unease rose in Peter's heart. He hadn't ordered anything online, so why would someone send him a package? He looked at Erica, a hint of worry flashing in his eyes. Peter didn't answer but stared intently at the package, his eyes filled with vigilance. Peter was stunned. He had no idea that there would be a baby in the package. "You'll find out soon enough," the other person said before hanging up. "I want to play a game with you," the other person said, "a very fun defense game." Peter took the package, feeling its weight. He didn't open it immediately but instead asked, "Who sent this?" "What game?" Peter asked. Inside the package wasn't a bomb but a baby. The deliveryman shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, sir, I don't know. The sender's information has been erased." "What's wrong, Peter?" she asked, noticing the package on the ground. Erica also came over, and upon seeing the baby, she let out a gasp. Peter gripped his phone tightly, a hint of murderous intent flashing in his eyes. "It's you," he said coldly. "What do you want?" Peter's expression changed drastically, and he abruptly threw the package away. The next morning, Peter received a mysterious phone call. He examined the baby carefully and found that the baby had no markings or anything that could prove its identity. "What on earth is going on?" Peter muttered to himself. Just then, the baby woke up. It opened its eyes, saw Peter and Erica, and then grinned, revealing an innocent smile. Peter and Erica exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of helplessness in each other's eyes. They never expected that a mysterious package would bring them a baby. "Peter, what do we do now?" Erica asked. Peter pondered for a moment and said, "Let's bring him inside first." Erica nodded and carefully picked up the baby. The baby was very well behaved, lying in Erica's arms, neither crying nor fussing. Peter closed the door and cleaned up the pieces of the package. He always felt that this matter was not so simple. An infant of unknown origin, a package with the sender's information erased, it's all too bizarre. He had a premonition that the arrival of this baby would bring them great trouble. "Peter, look!" Erica suddenly exclaimed. Peter turned his head and saw that the baby was wearing a pendant around its neck. The pendant has a very peculiar shape. "It looks like a spider." Peter's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of something. "Spider, CHDC," he muttered to himself. Could it be? A figure flashed into his mind. One of his former enemies, a mutant with spider-like abilities. Could it be him? Peter thought to himself. He wasn't sure, but he felt that the baby's appearance was likely related to that person. If that's the case, then things are in trouble, because that person is a very dangerous individual. "Peter, what are you thinking about?" Erica asked. Peter snapped out of his reverie, shook his head, and said, "It's nothing." He didn't want Erica to worry, so he didn't tell her his suspicions. "Let's give the baby a name first," Erica said. "We can't keep calling him baby." Peter thought for a moment and said, "Let's call him Miles." "Miles," Erica repeated. "That's a really nice name." Peter smiled but didn't say anything. He named his child Miles because he was reminded of a parallel universe version of himself who also had a son named Miles. Perhaps it is fate. For the next few days, Peter and Erica took care of Miles. Miles was well-behaved and healthy and didn't cause them much trouble. However, Peter's unease grew stronger and stronger. He always felt that something bad was about to happen. Finally, on the 7th day after Miles arrived at the villa, Peter's premonition came true. That evening, Peter was reading in his study when he suddenly heard a commotion outside. He put down his book, walked to the window, and looked outside. Outside the villa, a large number of men dressed in black stood. These men in black, like those who attacked the villa before, were all wearing black suits and black sunglasses. Peter's heart sank. He knew trouble was brewing. He turned to Erica and said, "Take care of Miles, I'm going out to check on things." Erica nodded, her eyes filled with worry. Peter walked to the door, took a deep breath, and then flung it open. "Who are you?" he asked in a cold voice. The man in black did not answer but instead launched an attack on Peter. Peter sneered. He knew these people were there to kill him. "Let's go!" He clenched his fists and charged forward. The battle was about to begin. Peter fought against many opponents, yet he held his own. His fists and feet moved like lightning, each move deadly, and the men in black fell one after another. Peter scoffed dismissively. These small fry didn't even deserve to die. He didn't bother using his superpowers, relying solely on hand-to-hand combat to utterly defeat the men in black. The wind howled as punches whistled, and the sounds of bones shattering echoed throughout the lawn in front of the villa. Soon, the lawn was filled with the groaning bodies of the men in black. "Is that all you've got?" Peter scoffed, dusting off his hands as if he had just done something insignificant. However, just as he was about to turn around and go back to the villa, something unexpected happened. A tall man in black appeared silently from behind the villa. He held a strangely shaped energy weapon in his hand and aimed it at Peter's back. "Die, spider!" the man in black growled, pulling the trigger. A dazzling beam of light struck Peter instantly. Peter grunted, staggered a few steps, and fell to his knees. He felt a powerful energy raging within him, damaging his bodily functions. "Damn it!" Peter gritted his teeth, trying to mobilize the energy in his body to resist, but found that his strength was rapidly dissipating. This energy weapon can actually suppress his superpowers. Upon seeing this, the tall man in black laughed triumphantly. "Spider, your end has come." He raised his weapon again, ready to deliver a fatal blow to Peter. At this critical moment, a figure suddenly rushed out and stood in front of Peter. "It's Erica." The energy beam struck Erica, who screamed and collapsed to the ground. "Erica!" Peter's eyes widened in fury, his heart filled with anger and remorse. He never imagined that Erica would sacrifice herself to save him. The tall man in black seemed stunned by the scene and stood frozen in place. Peter slowly stood up, his eyes flashing with cold, killing intent. He walked step by step toward the tall man in black, each step feeling as if he were stepping on the man's heart. What do you want to do?" the tall man in black asked in terror, dropping his weapon to the ground. Peter didn't speak, he just stared at him coldly. The energy fluctuations emanating from him grew increasingly intense, causing the surrounding air to distort. Ugh. The tall man in black felt an immense pressure that made it almost impossible for him to breathe. He knew he was doomed. Peter reached out and grabbed the tall man in black by the neck, lifting him up. 014501427 Chinese letter 203,390,020. You can't kill me, the tall man in black said with difficulty. I was just following orders. Acting under orders, Peter sneered. Whose orders? The tall, black-clad man from Jew County hesitated for a moment but finally uttered a name. It's Kingpin. Kingpin, a cold glint flashed in Peter's eyes. Very well, I will go find him. After saying that, he tightened his grip and a crisp crack sounded from the tall man in black's neck before he fell silent. Peter threw the tall, black-clad man's corpse to the ground, then walked over to Erica and picked her up. Erica, wake up! Peter gently shook Erica's body, his voice filled with sorrow and despair. However, Erica did not react at all. Her body gradually grew cold and the breath of life slowly faded away. Peter held Erica tightly, tears streaming silently down his face, but he will not forget her. He possessed invincible power, yet he was unable to protect the one he loved. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the night outside. A shooting star streaked across the night sky, leaving a dazzling trail of light. In the basement, a dazzling array of high-tech weapons gleamed with a cold light. Peter walked to a huge metal box, entered the password, and the box slowly opened, revealing a set of black armor inside. He will avenge her. He turned and headed towards the basement, his secret base where his weapons and equipment were stored. He needed to be fully prepared before engaging Kingpin in the final battle. This suit of armor was designed by Peter himself and manufactured using the most advanced materials and technology, possessing formidable defensive and offensive capabilities. It can withstand any form of attack. Bullets, shells, and energy weapons alike cannot inflict any damage. Jin Jing? Peter spat out the name through gritted teeth, his eyes flashing with icy killing intent. You took everything from me and I'll make you pay 1,000-fold. 014501427 Feilu 203,390,330. Peter donned the armor and activated its power system. The armor emitted a deep hum and a powerful surge of energy coursed through his body, filling him with a sense of strength. He recalled every moment he spent with Erica, his heart filled with both sweetness and pain. He's going to find Kingpin and avenge Erica. He placed Erica on the bed, then sat on the edge of it, watching her quietly. He put on the helmet, and the world before him transformed into a digitized image with various pieces of information flowing through his field of vision. He could clearly see his surroundings and all of Kingpin's presence. He was going to destroy Kingpin's empire and make Kingpin taste the pain of losing his beloved. Dark clouds filled the night sky and thunder rumbled. The trees around the villa trembled from the sound of his howl. He had never felt so helpless and desperate. This feeling of powerlessness nearly drove him to a breakdown. Peter took a deep breath, then turned and left the room. Peter carried Erica's body back to the villa. He will remember her forever. He will make Kingpin pay the price. Miles was still fast asleep in his nursery, completely unaware of everything happening around him. In the room, an unassuming plush teddy bear had its eyes flashing an eerie red light. He wants to make Kingpin regret ever being born. He looked up to the sky and roared, his voice filled with grief and pain. He recalled their first meeting. Erica's radiant smile, like warm winter sunshine, illuminated his cold heart. He remembered the trials and tribulations they had weathered together, Erica always silently supporting him, giving him boundless encouragement and strength. He remembered the future they had once dreamed of together, a future filled with love and happiness which had now vanished like a bubble. A chilling, killing intent flashed in Peter's eyes. He knew that Erica had left this world forever. Peter ignored the flashing red light of the teddy bear. At that moment, only the flames of revenge burned fiercely in his heart. He left Miles' room, gently closing the door behind him as if afraid of disturbing the baby's sleep. He stood in the hallway, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the turmoil within him. Erica's voice and smile flashed through his mind like frames from a film reel. It was as if the whole world was mourning Erica's death. 570 Kingpin, I'm here. Peter said with a sneer, then activated the armor's flight system, transforming into a black lightning bolt and disappearing into the night. Kingpin's headquarters were located in a heavily guarded skyscraper in Hell's Kitchen. However, these were of no concern to Peter. He moved through the building like a ghost, avoiding all surveillance and guards. He made his way unimpeded to Kingpin's office. In his office, Kingpin sat at his enormous desk, gazing out at the dazzling night view. He seemed to have anticipated Peter's arrival, showing no surprise whatsoever. "Peter, you finally arrived." Kingpin slowly turned around, looked at Peter, and a cold smile appeared on his face. "I've been waiting for you." "Kingpin, you killed Erica. I'll make you pay with your blood," Peter roared, his eyes burning with hatred. "Erica? Oh, you mean that woman," Kingpin said, feigning surprise. "What a pity she died protecting you, but it also proves my judgment was correct. You are indeed an opponent I should take seriously." "Enough talk. Prepare to die," Peter roared, charging at Kingpin and throwing a punch. Kingpin, not to be outdone, raised his arms to block. Their fists collided with a loud bang, shaking the entire office. Peter's strength far surpassed Kingpin's. Every punch carried devastating power. Although Kingpin was physically imposing and possessed considerable strength, he appeared utterly vulnerable in front of Peter. In just a few rounds, Kingpin was beaten by Peter until he was spitting blood and fell to the ground. You can't kill me," Kingpin said with difficulty. I know many secrets." "Secrets?" Peter sneered. "I'm not interested in your dirty secrets." He raised his fist, ready to deliver the final blow to Kingpin. Just then the office door suddenly opened and a woman dressed in a black bodysuit walked in. This woman was tall and alluring, with long, fiery red hair that flew through the air like flames. "Stop!" the woman cried. "Peter, you can't kill him." Peter was stunned, staring at the woman in front of him with a look of confusion in his eyes. "Who are you?" Peter asked. "I am the Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff," the woman said. "I'm here to stop you from making an even bigger mistake." "A mistake?" Peter sneered. "Killing Jin Jing was Mao's duty." "No, you're wrong," Natasha said. "Kingpin may have committed many evil deeds, but he possesses a lot of important intelligence. If he dies, this intelligence will be lost forever." "I don't care," Peter roared. "I will avenge Erica." "I know you're in pain, but you can't let hatred blind you," Natasha said. "Kingpin's death 617 won't bring Erica back to life. On the contrary, if you kill him, you'll become a criminal like him." Peter fell silent. He began to ponder Natasha's words. Natasha walked over to Kingpin and wiped him clean. "Kingpin, are you willing to cooperate with us?" Natasha asked. Kingpin nodded, a sly glint in his eyes. He knew this was a chance to survive. "Very good," Natasha said. "Then let's begin." Peter stood to the side, watching Natasha and Kingpin, his heart filled with doubt and unease. He didn't know what Natasha was up to, nor did he know if Kingpin would really cooperate with them. Peter took the bait. "What's the plan?" He paused deliberately, observing Peter's reaction. Peter walked over to Natasha, snatched the USB drive and said, "Let me take a look." Peter sneered, "Do your best. Do you think your do your best can save Erica's life?" He handed the USB drive to Natasha, who took it, examined it carefully, and then said, "It looks real." Natasha was silent for a moment, then said, "No. But it can save more people like Erica from Kingpin's clutches." Kingpin coughed a few times, then said, I know a lot of secrets. About the government, about the military, about superheroes." "Evidence?" "Of course there is." Jin pulled a USB drive from his pocket. "It contains all the information." Peter took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. "I will stop them." "What evidence do you have?" Peter asked. "What information do you have? Tell me." Peter's voice was icy like a chilling wind from hell. Natasha looked at Peter, a hint of worry flashing in her eyes. "Peter, what do you plan to do?" After Peter finished reading Zhao's, his face turned extremely ugly. He knew that if this plan succeeded, it would bring a huge disaster to the world. "I can't guarantee that," Natasha said, looking directly into Peter's eyes, her tone calm but firm. "But I can guarantee that I will do my best." He had a premonition that things weren't so simple. "You guarantee he'll reveal valuable information?" Peter's voice was low and hoarse, filled with suppressed anger. "A project about super soldiers." Kingpin deliberately lowered his voice, speaking mysteriously. They're developing a new type of serum that can give people superhuman strength and speed. Get to the point, Peter interrupted him impatiently. How can we stop it? Natasha asked. All right, Kingpin licked his lips, a sly glint in his eyes. I know about a secret SHIELD plan. He slowly lowered his fist, his clenched teeth making a grinding sound. He looked at Natasha with a complex expression as if questioning her or perhaps seeking an answer. Peter's fist froze in midair, anger burning in his eyes only to be extinguished by a strange doubt. Natasha's words were like a thorn in his heart. Erica's death was an eternal pain in his soul. The flames of revenge burned fiercely within him, almost consuming him, but Natasha's words forced him to re-examine his actions. Could everything end after revenge? Could Erica be brought back to life? Peter's heart skipped a beat. He knew SHIELD had been conducting various secret experiments, but he hadn't expected them to be developing a super soldier serum. If this news was true, that would be a huge threat. Damn it, he slammed his fist on the table. Those bastards at SHIELD are playing with fire. Peter didn't speak. He turned to look at Kingpin, his eyes filled with disgust and hatred. The obese man was leaning against Natasha, a smug smile on his face. That smile seemed to mock Peter's helplessness, his naivety, and his foolishness. He inserted the USB drive into his computer and opened the files inside. Sure enough, the files contained records of SHIELD's secret plans, including experimental data, test subjects, and the serum formula. Peter sneered, I'll make them pay. He turned to look at Kingpin, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Is there anything else you want to say? Kingpin trembled with fear, stammering, and nothing, that's all. Peter walked up to Kingpin, grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. Do you think you can live like this? Peter's voice was icy, like the pronouncement of death. No, don't kill me, Kingpin struggled desperately, his eyes filled with fear. Mary Jane. Natasha stood to one side of room 103, watching Peter's brutality, her heart filled with helplessness and worry. She knew that Peter was blinded by hatred, he had lost his mind. Suddenly he saw a familiar figure walking out of a bar. Peter took a deep breath and said, I'm fine. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. She didn't know whether Peter's choice was right or wrong. Are you sure? Mary Jane was still uneasy. Mary Jane turned around when she heard someone call her name. After leaving Kingpin's office, Peter didn't immediately head to SHIELD for revenge. He needed to calm down and carefully consider his next plan. He wandered aimlessly through the streets of New York, filled with confusion and uncertainty. Erica's death left him feeling immense pain and emptiness. He didn't know the meaning of his existence nor where he should go from there. She wanted to stop Peter, but she knew she was powerless to do anything about it. I'm sure, Peter nodded. I need to be alone. Peter, what are you doing here? Peter looked at Mary Jane, his heart filled with complex emotions. He didn't know how to explain his current situation nor how to face Mary Jane. After saying that, he turned and left. Mary Jane watched Peter's departing figure, her heart filled with worry. She didn't know what had happened to Peter, but she knew he had encountered some trouble. When he woke up again, he found himself lying in a hospital bed. Really, Peter forced a smile, I'm just a little tired. Peter was wandering aimlessly down the street when suddenly he felt dizzy, his vision went black and he lost consciousness. Mary Jane looked at Peter with concern in her eyes. What's wrong? You don't look well. She wanted to chase after him but ultimately held back. Kingpin's screams grew weaker and weaker until they finally disappeared completely. Kingpin's screams echoed through the office. Peter's fists landed on Kingpin's body again and again. She knew that Peter needed time to deal with his own things. Too late. Peter's fist, with devastating force, slammed into Kingpin's face. Really? Mary Jane clearly didn't believe Peter. A doctor in a white coat was standing beside his bed. When she saw Peter, a look of surprise appeared on her face. Natasha watched Peter's departing figure, her heart filled with complex emotions. But she knew that this was only the beginning. Peter threw Kingpin's body aside, turned, and left the office. That's Mary Jane. Peter's heart skipped a beat and he quickly walked over. I don't care, Peter gritted his teeth. I want Kingpin dead, will you help me or not? He recalled every moment he spent with Erica, her radiant smile, her gentle embrace, and the unspoken, "I love you." "No, Peter," Natasha said firmly, "your world hasn't collapsed. You still have me and you still have SHIELD, and we will all help you." 08.0. After hanging up the phone, Peter leaned weakly against the wall and slowly slid to the ground. He felt like an empty shell, left with endless emptiness and despair. "Okay," he finally said, "I'll wait for your news." Peter didn't speak, he closed his eyes and Erica's image appeared in his mind. "Tell me who killed her. Please give me flowers." "Natasha," his voice was hoarse and low like a roar from hell, "I've found Kingpin, I'm going to kill him." "Sir, you can't do this, you need to rest," the doctor called out anxiously from behind him. Peter ignored him, stumbled out of the ward, snatched a passing nurse's phone and dialed Natasha's number. "Can't what?" Peter interrupted her. "He's already killed Erica, I can't just let this go." "You're awake?" the doctor asked. He shoved the doctor aside, staggered off the bed, and ripped the IV tubing out. The intense pain made him groan, but he ignored it. He had only one thought: revenge. Natasha was silent for a moment on the other end of the phone, then said, "Peter, I know you're in pain, but you can't." "I know this is difficult," Natasha's voice softened, "but your impulsive actions will only make things worse." The doctor sighed and then said, "It's Yuan Shunbian's habit." "Erica," he murmured to himself. "You were overly fatigued and the emotional stress caused you to faint," the doctor explained. "You need to rest." Peter roared, "Kingpin, it must be Kingpin, he deserves to die." Erica's death was like a huge hole ripped open in his chest, and the flames of anger burned fiercely within it, almost consuming him. The doctor was startled by Peter's sudden action, his glasses nearly falling off. He frantically pushed up his frames and stammered, I don't know, I'm just a doctor." Peter suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with pain and anger. "Peter," she said, trying to keep her voice calm, "I know you want revenge, but you have to trust me. I will help you find Kingpin and bring him to justice. But not now, you need to rest now. You need to recover." Peter's hand holding the phone trembled slightly. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to control the anger in his heart. Peter nodded. "What's wrong with me?" Natasha fell silent again. She knew Peter's pain and understood his anger. But she knew even more clearly that Peter was currently in a state of extreme emotional turmoil, and if he were allowed to act recklessly, the consequences would be unimaginable. He sat up abruptly and grabbed the doctor's collar. "Calm down, how can you expect me to calm down?" Peter roared. "My love is dead and the murderer is still at large. How can you expect me to calm down?" "Restore," Peter sneered. "What is there for me to restore? My world has collapsed." "Not aside, I know, but you're in a bad situation right now and you need to calm down." "No, I will not accept my fate," he said through gritted teeth. "I will seek revenge." Mary Jane felt a pang of pain in her heart when she saw Peter like this. She went over to him, gently hugged him and said softly, "Peter, I know you're very sad, but you must be strong. You still have me, I will always be with you." A sense of foreboding suddenly rose in Peter's heart. The emergency room was in chaos, filled with injured people, and the doctors and nurses were overwhelmed with work. Peter and Mary Jane exchanged a glance, both seeing doubt and unease in each other's eyes. Beast! When they arrived at the emergency room entrance, they were stunned by what they saw. He turned to look at Mary Jane, only to find that her face had also turned pale. "Mary Jane," he took a deep breath, then said, "I think." The broadcast voice repeated itself over and over, its tone urgent and tense. "What happened?" Mary Jane asked. After a long while, Peter gradually calmed down. He looked up at Mary Jane, his eyes filled with gratitude. 1.3 Peter followed Mary Jane's gaze and saw a person covered in blood staggering toward them. And behind him followed a monster. He knew that Mary Jane had always cared for him and loved him silently. But he had been so absorbed in his longing for Erica that he had neglected the girl who had always been silently protecting him. Just then a familiar voice rang in his ear, "Peter." Mary Jane smiled. "Silly girl, why are you thanking me? We're friends." Why did fate have to be so cruel as to take everything away from him? Its claws were incredibly sharp, gleaming with a cold light. One look was enough to tell. The monster was over 2 meters tall, covered in black fur with a ferocious face and uttered low growls. "Thank you, Mary Jane." "What's going on?" Peter grabbed a passing nurse and asked. Peter looked at Matthew Jane's gentle smile and a strange feeling welled up inside him. It was a feeling that was both familiar and strange, both warm and bitter. "Peter," Mary Jane said, trembling, "look." Peter looked up and saw Mary Jane standing in front of him, looking at him with concern. Just then, the hospital's loudspeaker suddenly blared. "Emergency notice, emergency notice. All medical staff, please proceed to the emergency room immediately. I repeat, all medical staff, please proceed to the emergency room immediately." Tears streamed silently down his cheeks as he clutched his head tightly, sobbing in anguish. Peter buried his head in Mary Jane's shoulder, letting the tears flow freely. He didn't know what to do or what the future held. He only knew that at that moment he needed a warm embrace, comfort, and support. The two got up and walked towards the emergency room. The nurse said in a terrified voice, "I don't know, suddenly so many wounded people came, they all looked like they were attacked by some kind of wild animal." Mary Jane gently patted Peter's back, softly comforting him. She didn't ask him what had happened, nor did she offer any grand advice. She simply stayed by his side, giving him the warmth and strength he needed most. "Mary Jane," he called out hoarsely, his eyes filled with pain and confusion. Peter shook his head. "I don't know, let's go check." Peter scoffed dismissively. "A monster? Just a slightly larger toy." He didn't even bother to look at Mary Jane's terrified expression and walked straight toward the blood-soaked, staggering man and the monster behind him. "Peter, watch out!" Mary Jane's scream was completely ignored by him. The monster let out a deafening roar and lunged at Peter, brandishing its claws. Peter didn't even flinch, he simply stretched out a hand. Bang! With a muffled thud, the monster's massive body froze in midair for 27 seconds, then flew backward like a cannonball, crashing heavily into the emergency room wall and smashing a huge hole in it. Amidst the swirling dust, Peter brushed non-existent dust off his hands, his eyes filled with disdain. "So what if you rebel?" He then looked at the person covered in blood, who had collapsed to the ground, barely alive. "What happened?" Peter asked condescendingly, his tone devoid of any concern, only full of arrogance and impatience. The man struggled to lift his head, looking at Peter with terrified eyes, and stammered, "Monsters, so many monsters. They came from the sewers." "The sewers?" Peter raised an eyebrow, a thought flashing through his mind. Could it be the lizardman, the guy he defeated and threw into the sewers? "Peter," Mary Jane's voice trembled slightly, What should we do?" Peter glanced at her and said impatiently, "What else can we do? Of course, we have to go and clear out those monsters." After saying that, he ignored Mary Jane and walked straight toward the sewer entrance. Mary Jane stood frozen, watching Peter's retreating figure, her heart filled with complex emotions. She knew Peter was powerful enough to easily resolve any crisis. But she also knew that Peter's power was accompanied by arrogance and indifference. He seemed never to be afraid, never to care about the feelings of others. She bit her lip but ultimately followed after them. The sewers reeked of a nauseating stench and the dim, damp environment was oppressive. Peter, however, strolled ahead as if he were taking a leisurely walk in his own backyard. And a roar came from the darkness, and then a monster covered in black fur emerged from the shadows and pounced on Peter. Peter sneered and swung his palm, smashing the monster's head open. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled thuds echoed in the sewers. The monster of the 10-Song dynasty was easily dealt with by Peter. Mary Jane followed behind Peter, watching the monsters he had beaten to a bloody pulp, and her stomach churned. She fought off the urge to vomit, clutching Peter's clothes tightly as if only then could she find a sliver of security. What are these monsters?" she asked, trembling. "Just some failed experiments," Peter replied casually, as if he were talking about something trivial. "An experimental subject?" Mary Jane was even more puzzled. Peter stopped, turned around, looked at Mary Jane, and a playful smile appeared on his lips. "You know Dr. Connors?" Mary Jane nodded. "I know, he's the chief scientist at the Osborne Corporation. He conducted a human genetic modification experiment attempting to fuse human genes with lizard genes to create a super soldier with super regenerative abilities," Peter explained. "But the experiment failed and the test subjects turned into these ugly monsters, so these monsters are all—" Mary Jane couldn't believe her ears. "Yes, they are all human." Peter's tone was tinged with sarcasm. "However, they are no longer human." He continued walking forward, leaving Mary Jane standing there alone, processing the shocking news. The sewers grew deeper and deeper, and the monsters multiplied. But for Peter, these monsters remained utterly insignificant. He was like a grim reaper, leaving corpses in his wake. Suddenly, Peter stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong?" Mary Jane asked. Peter did not answer, but instead looked up and gazed ahead. In the dim light, a huge figure appeared before them. The figure was taller than the previous monsters, radiating a suffocating sense of oppression. "It seems the mastermind has finally emerged." A bloodthirsty smile crept across Peter's lips. "I'd like to see who's behind this." Mary Jane stared at the enormous figure, her heart filled with terror. She instinctively sensed that this enemy was completely different from the previous lowly minions. Peter took a deep breath, a glint of excitement flashing in his eyes. Finally, a somewhat interesting opponent has arrived. Peter smiled dismissively and took a step forward. The enormous figure moved with it, like a small mountain slowly shifting, intensifying the oppressive feeling. Mary Jane turned pale, with fright gripping Peter's arm tightly, her body trembling slightly. "Don't be afraid, little kitty." Peter looked down at Mary Jane, a hint of teasing in his voice. "I'll protect you." He gently patted Mary Jane's hand, then let go and walked towards the arrogant figure. "Who are you?" Peter asked, his voice calm and arrogant. The figure did not answer but instead let out a low roar that shook the sewage in the sewers. "Looks like you don't like talking," Peter shrugged. "Then let's communicate with our fists." Before he finished speaking, Peter's figure disappeared from the spot. Bang. A loud bang was heard, and a gust of wind swept through the sewer. Mary Jane barely opened her eyes and saw Peter standing in front of the huge figure, punching it in the chest. The figure staggered back a few steps, letting out a painful groan. "Is that all you've got?" Peter scoffed dismissively. "I thought you were something special." He charged forward again, raining punches and kicks upon the figure. Although the figure was enormous, it appeared clumsy and helpless in front of Peter, unable to withstand Peter's attacks at all. Bang. Bang, bang, the dull thud echoed through the sewers, accompanied by the figure's screams. Mary Jane watched this scene with a mixture of fear and excitement. She knew Peter was powerful, but she had never seen him so ferocious. Roar! The figure let out an angry roar, then suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a stream of green venom. Peter was prepared and dodged the venom by sidestepping, then, good luck, kicked the figure in the chin. Snap! With a sharp crack, Peter kicked the figure's chin, shattering it, and the massive body crashed to the ground. Peter clapped his hands as if he had done something insignificant. "That's it," he smiled dismissively. "I thought you'd be a bit more durable." He turned and walked toward Mary Jane. "Are you all right?" he asked. Mary Jane shook her head, her eyes filled with adoration as she looked at Peter. "You're amazing," she exclaimed sincerely. Peter smiled but didn't say anything. Suddenly his expression changed and he turned sharply to look at the figure lying on the ground. What is this?" Mary Jane asked in horror. Peter looked down at Mary Jane, a hint of struggle flashing in his eyes. He didn't want to hurt Mary Jane, but his body was already out of control. In the sewers, only Mary Jane's voice and Peter's desperate roars remained. His body mutated at an increasingly rapid pace, and soon he became a half-human, half-lizard monster. "Dr. Connors's gene editing agent," Peter said through gritted teeth. "It seems he's done more experiments on this monster." The figure's body began to tremble violently and dense green lines appeared on its skin. "Damn you, Connors," he roared. "I'll kill you." Mary Jane watched this scene unfold, her heart filled with fear and helplessness. "No, Peter," she cried, trying to get up, but Peter kicked her away. "Peter," Mary Jane exclaimed, unable to believe her eyes. He felt a powerful force surging within him, making him want to destroy everything. Peter looked at his mutated body, his eyes filled with anger and resentment. "Damn it!" Peter cursed, feeling a burning sensation where the liquid had splashed on him. Boom! He craved blood, destruction, and the urge to tear everything apart. This primal, animalistic instinct clashed fiercely with his remaining humanity, causing him immense agony. He painfully recalled every moment with Mary Jane, her smile, her embrace, her tenderness. These beautiful memories pierced his heart like sharp blades, fueling his despair. With a loud bang, the figure's body exploded and green liquid splashed everywhere. He looked down and saw that his skin was rapidly turning green and was covered with fine scales. He grabbed Mary Jane's hand and ran away. "Oh no," Peter hissed, "it's going to mutate." Damn it, damn it!" He slammed his fist against the slippery wall, the green scales scraping against the rough bricks with a grating sound. The excruciating pain fueled his rage. The power within him surged like a volcano about to erupt, searing every nerve in his body. "I'm sorry," he murmured to himself. "I couldn't control myself." He turned around and walked deeper into the sewer, his figure gradually disappearing into the darkness. Mary Jane fell heavily to the ground and lost consciousness. Peter looked at Mary Jane lying on the ground, a flicker of pain in his eyes. Mary Jane was pushed to the ground by Peter, and as she watched Peter gradually lose his mind, her eyes filled with tears. On the back of the photo was written a sentence, "I love you, Mary Jane." Peter staggered and stumbled through the dark, damp sewers. Waves of excruciating pain from the mutation washed over him, assaulting his reason. He roared and howled, his voice echoing through the empty sewers like the wailing of a trapped beast. He hated Connors, hated the sudden mutation, and hated his own powerlessness to protect Mary Jane. Suddenly, a pale hand reached out from Mary Jane's pocket and gripped a photograph tightly. She didn't know what to do, so she could only hold Peter's hand tightly as if that would give him some comfort. With the last shred of his sanity, he pushed Mary Jane away. "Get out of here." He looked up to the sky and roared, his voice filled with pain and despair. The photo shows Peter and Mary Jane together. Peter pulled Mary Jane away from the liquid, but they still got splashed with some. He pressed a button and the laboratory door slowly opened. This person was Dr. Connors. Peter looked at the mouse without a trace of pity. He stretched out his huge claws, grabbed the mouse by the neck and lifted it up. "Boss," the mouse managed to speak, its voice weak, "save." At the end of the sewer was a spacious underground space. It was filled with garbage and waste, emitting a nauseating stench. In the center of the garbage heap lay a man covered in blood. "Please," the mouse managed to utter a few words, let me go." "It seems my experiment was a success," he muttered to himself, a sinister smile creeping across his face. In the sewers, Peter's mutation continued and his sanity grew increasingly blurred. He didn't know where he was going or what he was supposed to do. He only knew that he had to find Connors and take revenge on him. Requesting flowers. He looked at Peter's mutation data displayed on the screen, his eyes filled with excitement and anticipation. "Peter Parker, you will be my perfect test subject," he whispered. "You will be my weapon for conquering the world." The mouse struggled desperately, but his strength was insignificant in front of Peter. With a snap, Peter snapped the mouse's neck and its body went limp, completely losing its life. Peter slowly walked up to the rat, looking down at him. The mutated rat was much larger than before, resembling 10 enormous lizard monsters. Peter recognized him. It was one of his former henchmen, a petty thug known as Rat. Rat was a bully who preyed on the weak and committed all sorts of evil deeds. Peter had warned him before to tone it down, but Rat hadn't heeded his advice. Suddenly, he smelled blood. The smell stimulated his senses, making the animalistic instincts within him even more restless. He followed the scent, step by step, deeper into the area. The mouse's face turned deathly pale instantly. He opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. Peter tossed the rat's carcass aside as if discarding a piece of trash. He turned and continued walking deeper into the sewers. His figure gradually disappeared into the darkness, leaving only the rat's corpse and the lingering stench of blood in the air. Deeper into the sewers, in a huge underground laboratory, a figure in a white lab coat stands in front of a pile of instruments, closely observing the data on the screen. "You betrayed me?" Peter's voice was icy like a demon from hell. "Come, Peter Parker." He opened his arms as if welcoming a triumphant hero. "Join my ranks and together we will rule the world." "Is that so?" Peter sneered. "Then tell me who leaked my plan to the police." At that moment, the rat lay on the ground, barely alive, a dagger protruding from its chest, its blood staining the surrounding garbage. Its eyes were wide open, filled with fear and despair. Peter ignored the mouse's pleas for mercy. A glint of wolfish cunning flashed in his eyes. "No, I didn't," the mouse cried out in terror. I've always been loyal to you." Peter's hand gradually tightened, and the mouse found it increasingly difficult to breathe. "Mary Jane," he murmured her name, his voice hoarse, filled with endless pain and regret. How he longed to go back to the past, back to that sunny afternoon, to stay by her side forever. "Go to hell," he said coldly. Finally, in a dark corner, he saw her. Mary Jane lay motionless on the ground, covered in mud and blood. Her face was pale and her breathing was weak. He vowed to make Connors pay. "I just want her to be my test subject," Dr. Connors shrugged, seemingly indifferent. "She possesses special genes that can help me refine my research." "Who did this?" Peter's voice was deep and murderous, his lizard eyes gleaming with a fierce light. Dr. Connors was prepared. He pressed a button and several mechanical soldiers suddenly appeared in the laboratory. These mechanical soldiers, armed with weapons, opened fire on Peter. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks, sensing a familiar presence. "Peter!" Mary Jane weakly opened her eyes, seeing Peters Chinese letter Zhengning, meaning ferocious or hideous face. She wasn't afraid. Instead, a relieved smile appeared on her face. "You've come." Peter followed Connors's scent and ran wildly. He was incredibly fast, leaving a trail of afterimages in the sewers. He smashed through walls and waded through sewage like a wild beast out of control. "That's..." The scent of Mary Jane. The laboratory door slowly opened and Dr. Connors appeared in the doorway. He was wearing a white lab coat, a sinister smile on his face. "Mary Jane!" Peter roared again, rushing to her side and carefully cradling her in his arms. His massive paws trembled as he tried to hurt her. "Why did you hurt Mary Jane?" Peter roared, his eyes bloodshot. "You deserve to die!" Peter roared and charged at King Canespero. It seemed like it could stop at any moment. Peter abruptly stopped, his enormous lizard eyes scanning back and forth in the dim sewer. Mary Jane was the only remaining trace of tenderness in his heart, the one he desperately wanted to protect after his mutation. But this presence, as faint as a candle flickering in the wind mixed with a nauseating stench, made his heart tighten. It's Connors," Mary Jane managed to utter a few words before losing consciousness. "Mary Jane?" Peter growled in his throat, a low growl like that of a wild beast echoing through the sewers. His massive claws left deep scratches in the ground, a testament to his inner turmoil and unease. Finally, he arrived at the door of Dr. Connors' laboratory. The laboratory door was tightly closed, but Peter could sense Connors' presence emanating from inside. "Peter, you finally arrived," Dr. Connors said. "I've been waiting for you." He followed the scent, running frantically. The stench of the sewers was amplified to an extreme degree by his keen sense of smell, making him almost nauseous. The carcasses of rats, the rotting garbage, the filthy sludge, all of this disgusted him but only intensified his worry for Mary Jane. He roared to the sky, his voice filled with anger and despair. The roar echoed through the empty sewers like the howl of a wild beast foreshadowing an impending storm. "Connors, get out here!" Peter roared, his voice like thunder, shaking the entire laboratory. "Connors!" Peter gritted his teeth, his heart filled with rage. He gently placed Mary Jane on the ground, then stood up and roared to the sky. The roar, filled with anger and pain, echoed through the sewers like the howl of a demon from hell. Finally, Peter seized the opportunity and tore off the mechanical spider's head with a single claw. "Stop lecturing me!" Peter charged at Spider-Man again, his massive claws whistling through the air as he viciously clawed at Spider-Man's chest. "I know you're in pain, but you can't let anger consume you." Spider-Man tried to persuade Peter, slowly approaching him in hopes of calming him down. "Dr. Connors made a mistake and he should be punished by law, not executed by you," Spider-Man insisted, his voice trembling with fear of Peter's immense power. Spider-Man stood at the lab door, his taut web shooters pointing at Peter, his tone serious. "Peter, I know you're angry, but you can't kill him." "It seems I underestimated you," Dr. Connors said. "But do you think you can defeat me like this?" Just then a voice suddenly rang out, "Stop." Upon seeing this, Dr. Connor's expression changed slightly. He hadn't expected Peter to be so powerful. Peter turned his head and saw a man dressed in black who was actually speaking. "Can't," Peter let out a maniacal laugh, his laughter filled with sarcasm and disdain. "What right do you have to stop me? Who do you think you are?" His enormous claws swung in the air, gleaming with a metallic sheen as if ready to tear Dr. Connors to shreds at any moment. What kind of monster are you?" Dr. Connors said, trembling. He pressed a button again and the laboratory floor suddenly cracked open, revealing a giant mechanical spider emerging from the ground. "Anger? This isn't just anger, this is justice?" Peter swung his claw, sending Spider-Man flying and crashing heavily into the lab wall. "You have no idea what pain I've endured." He raised his enormous claws, ready to end Dr. Connors' life. Dr. Connors watched all this, his face turning pale. He knew he had lost. Spider-Man got up from the ground and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Peter, I know you're powerful, but you can't abuse your power. Doing so will only turn you into the kind of person you hate." The battle lasted a long time, and both sides were injured. Peter was covered in wounds and the mechanical spider had several legs torn off by him. Peter engaged in a fierce battle with the mechanical spider Jan 27. He used his immense strength and speed to outmaneuver the mechanical spider. This person is none other than Spider-Man. Peter ignored him and walked step by step toward Dr. Connors, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Peter skillfully dodged the attacks while wielding his enormous claws, tearing the mechanical soldiers to shreds one by one. The mechanical spider suddenly collapsed, leaving the laboratory in a mess. "You hurt Mary Jane and you must pay the price," Peter said coldly. Can the law bring my beloved Mary Jane back to life?" Peter roared, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Dr. Connors as if he wanted to devour him alive. "He must pay for his actions." The mechanical spider was enormous and equipped with various weapons. It swung its massive mechanical arms and attacked Peter. Peter glanced disdainfully at the belated Spider-Man and scoffed. "Spider-Man, you want to get involved too?" His tone was full of sarcasm, as if Spider-Man's appearance was nothing more than an annoying fly to him. Spider-Man skillfully dodged Peter's attacks while constantly trying to persuade him. "Peter, think of Mary Jane. She certainly wouldn't want you to become a serial killer." This can't be," Peter murmured to himself, unwilling to believe it. How could Mary Jane, the woman he loved so deeply, have become like this? "I can give you money, lots of money," Dr. Connors cried out in a panic, trying to buy his life with money. "What's going on?" Peter looked around warily, his senses sharpened in the darkness. Peter froze, a massive shock like a bucket of ice water poured over him, jolting him back to reality from the flames of rage. He looked at the Mary Jane before him, her green skin, sharp claws, and those red eyes filled with an evil light. She was completely different from the gentle lover he remembered. "It really is Mary Jane." Suddenly, a dark figure darted out from the darkness, a sharp dagger aimed at Peter's chest. Mary Jane! Peter stared in disbelief, then released his grip and the dark figure staggered and fell to the ground. Peter reacted quickly, dodging the dagger attack by sidestepping and then grabbed the shadowy figure's wrist. Who? Peter roared, squeezing hard, and the shadowy figure's wrist made a crisp cracking sound as it broke. He raised his enormous claws, ready to end Dr. Connor's life. The shadowy figure let out a painful groan, and then a familiar voice rang out in the darkness. "It's me, Peter." Just then, the laboratory lights suddenly went out, plunging the entire laboratory into darkness. Spider-Man was speechless for a moment, unsure how to respond to Peter's question. "Peter, stop!" Dr. Connors suddenly shouted, his voice filled with fear. "You've won, let me go." Surprised Peter, Mary Jane's voice was hoarse and low like a demon from hell. "Money," Peter sneered, walking up to Dr. Connors and looking down at him. "You think I care about your stinking money?" The laboratory lights came on again, and Peter could see the face of the shadowy figure. Peter seized the opportunity, shattering Spider-Man's web shooters with a single swipe, then slammed him to the ground. "You're too weak, Spider-Man, you're no match for me." "I am and I am not." Mary Jane slowly stood up, her body beginning to change. Her skin turned green, sharp claws grew, and a pair of enormous wings sprouted from her back. "I am the reborn Mary Jane and also the monster you created." "Nothing is impossible, Peter." Mary Jane let out a chilling laugh, sharp and piercing like fingernails scratching a blackboard. "You created me, you made me what I am now." But she was completely different from before. Her eyes gleamed with an eerie red light and a wicked smile played on her lips. You're not Mary Jane." Peter took a few steps back in horror, unable to believe his eyes. "Shut up!" Peter's attacks grew increasingly frenzied, destroying all the equipment in the lab, leaving it in complete chaos. "Who do you think you are to mention Mary Jane's name?" Peter turned and stared coldly at Dr. Connors. "Let you go? Do you think Mary Jane's life can be compensated with 10 let you go's words?" "Mary Jane, please stop," Peter pleaded with her while dodging the attacks. "This isn't you, you can still be saved." "Shut up, I have no name, I am a monster you created," she screamed, then lunged at Peter. "Help, who will save me?" Mary Jane let out a shrill, agonizing laugh. You'll only turn me into an even more terrifying monster." Peter knew the power of this attack, he dared not take it head-on and could only dodge. The energy ball struck the laboratory wall, triggering a violent explosion. The entire laboratory began to darken. Peter stood outside the ruins, watching the raging flames, his heart filled with pain and despair. He had lost Mary Jane and he had lost himself. Spider-Man nodded. "Yes, Peter. But we need your help." Spider-Man walked up to Peter, looking at him with eyes full of sympathy and pity. "Why are you dodging, Peter? Aren't you invincible?" Mary Jane mocked, lunging at Peter again, faster and more ferocious than before. Peter was forced to fight back, brandishing his enormous claws and engaging in a fierce battle with Mary Jane. Inside the laboratory, green and red energies collided repeatedly, producing deafening explosions. He wandered aimlessly through the streets like a walking corpse. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure appear before him. "Peter, I know you're in pain, but you can't give up hope," Spider-Man said. "Mary Jane isn't dead yet, we still have a chance to save her." Peter looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Really? Can we really still save her?" Peter escaped from the laboratory amidst the chaos, while Mary Jane was buried in the ruins. "Mary Jane, listen to me," Peter tried to persuade her, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by Mary Jane. Peter looked up, his eyes filled with pain and struggle. He didn't want to fight, much less hurt Mary Jane, even though she had become a monster. "Stop pretending, Peter," Mary Jane roared, brandishing her sharp claws that left green streaks in the air. "You've ruined everything I have. Now I'm going to make you pay the price." Peter's strength far surpasses that of Mary Jane, yet he hesitates to unleash his full power. He fears hurting her even though she is no longer the Mary Jane she once was. "Spider-Man!" Peter exclaimed in surprise. Mary Jane, however, showed no restraint, attacking Peter relentlessly with deadly blows. She hated him, hated that he had destroyed everything she had, hated that he had turned her into a monster. "It wasn't me, Peter clutched his head in anguish, overwhelmed by intense self-blame and remorse. He had always thought himself invincible, capable of controlling everything, but he never imagined that he would ultimately lose what he cherished most. She suddenly stopped attacking, hovering in the air with green energy swirling around her, forming a huge ball of energy. Peter instinctively dodged, and Mary Jane's claws grazed his cheek, leaving a deep, bloody mark. Peter's thoughts raced. He remembered Dr. Connor's experiments, the green potion, Mary Jane's agonizing struggle after being injected with it. Was this the consequence? Had he personally destroyed the person he loved most? "Peter, you forced me to do this," she roared, then hurled the energy ball at Peter. "Who is this?" Peter asked, puzzled. Peter fell silent, torn, and hesitant. He longed to save Mary Jane, but he was also unwilling to relinquish his power. He knew that without it he would be nothing. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure appear in front of him. "What price?" Peter asked impatiently. Peter smiled dismissively, an arrogant look on his face. "Give up my power, become an ordinary person? Are you kidding me?" He touched the remaining bloodstains on his face, his tone full of disdain. "I am Peter, the invincible Peter. Why would I give up everything for a monster who is no longer Mary Jane?" He paused, not continuing, but Peter understood what he meant. The mysterious man smiled and said, "You need to give up your power and become an ordinary person." Spider-Man anxiously pleaded, "Peter, I know this is hard for you to accept, but—" "What kind of help?" Peter asked. "Who I am is not important. What is important is that I can help you rescue Mary Jane," the mysterious man said. "However, this will come at a price." "Yes, but you don't have much time," the mysterious man said. "Mary Jane's condition is very unstable. She could—" Peter left the church and wandered aimlessly through the streets. Mary Jane's image kept flashing through his mind, from their first meeting to her being infected by the Green Goblin's potion, and then to her becoming like this. "I'll help you," Harry said. "I know you're in pain and I know you want to save Mary Jane. I can help you. I can give you back Mary Jane or even restore her to her original state." "Request flowers." A glimmer of hope flickered in Peter's heart. "Really, you can really do it." "Of course, I am Harry Osborn," Harry said confidently. "However, I need your help." "Harry," Peter exclaimed in surprise. The mysterious man said calmly, "I can." His voice was deep and magnetic, as if it could penetrate the heart. "I know the pain in your heart and I know your love for Mary Jane, but if you truly love her, you should be willing to give everything for her, even your power." Spider-Man patted Peter on the shoulder. "Okay, Peter. Come with me, I'll take you to see someone." "He is—" Spider-Man was about to introduce him when the mysterious man interrupted him. "Peter, it's been a long time," Harry said with a smile, but his smile seemed a little strange. Spider-Man led Peter to an ancient church where a mysterious figure in a black robe was waiting for them. "I need your power," Harry said. "Only your power can activate my new invention and save Mary Jane." I need time to think about it," Peter finally said. Harry Osborn, Peter's best friend, is also the son of the Green Goblin. "How did you get here?" Peter asked warily. "Mary Jane," Peter murmured to himself, his eyes filled with pain and despair. "Hard to accept," Peter interrupted Spider-Man, his eyes filled with sarcasm. "You simply don't understand. You can't possibly comprehend how I feel right now. Can you even begin to comprehend the pain of losing a loved one, losing everything?" Peter took a deep breath and said firmly, "I'm willing to do anything to save Mary Jane." Peter hesitated, unsure whether to trust Harry. He knew Harry had always harbored special feelings for Mary Jane, and he also knew Harry had always wanted his power. "Peter, don't hesitate," Harry urged. "This is your only chance. Do you really want to lose Mary Jane?" Peter finally agreed to Harry's request. He followed Harry to the Osborn Corporation's secret laboratory. Inside the laboratory, a huge device stood in the center, emitting an eerie glow. "What is this?" Peter asked. "This is a gene recombination device," Harry explained. "It can alter the genes of any creature, restore Mary Jane to her original state, and even make her stronger." "Really?" Peter's eyes were full of anticipation. "Of course, when have I ever lied to you?" Harry smiled and then activated the gene recombination chapter. The device emitted a dazzling light, enveloping Peter and Harry. Peter felt a powerful energy surge into his body and his body began to change. "Harry, what are you doing?" Peter cried out in alarm. Harry's smile twisted into a sinister grin. Peter, thank you, your power is mine now. Peter then realized he had been tricked by Harry. Harry didn't want to save Mary Jane at all, he wanted to seize her power. Harry, you be asterisk 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 D, Peter roared, but he was powerless to resist. Harry absorbed Peter's power and became incredibly strong. He laughed wildly, looking at Peter lying on the ground, his eyes filled with smugness and mockery. Peter, now you're just an ordinary person, while I am invincible. Just then, the laboratory door was suddenly kicked open and a figure walked in. Mary Jane, Peter exclaimed in surprise. But the Mary Jane before him was different from before. The green energy around her had vanished, replaced by a more powerful and malevolent black energy. Peter, long time no see, Mary Jane said in a cold voice, a sinister smile playing on her lips. Now the game begins. Peter stared in disbelief at what he saw. Mary Jane, whom he had once loved so deeply, now exuded a chilling aura of darkness. This black energy was more malevolent and unfamiliar than the Green Goblin's potion. Like a venomous snake, it coiled around Mary Jane, devouring her original kindness and innocence. A game? What game do you want to play? Peter endured the excruciating pain and got up from the ground. Harry had taken away his power. He was now just an ordinary person, but he would never give up, never succumb to evil. Mary Jane let out a cold laugh and black energy coalesced into a sharp dagger in her hand. Of course. It's a survival game. She lunged at Peter, the dagger slicing through the air, aimed straight for his heart. 014501427 Failu 203,470,480. Peter instinctively dodged, the dagger grazing his chest and leaving a shallow gash. He staggered backward, narrowly avoiding the attack. You've slowed down and your strength has weakened, Mary Jane mocked. Is this all you've got? How disappointing. Peter gritted his teeth and remained silent. He knew he was at a significant 4.8 disadvantage, but he had to stay calm and find an opportunity to fight back. Don't worry, the game has only just begun. Mary Jane launched another attack, the black energy in her hands shifting unpredictably, sometimes turning into daggers, sometimes into claws, constantly striking at Peter. Peter dodged left and right, barely avoiding the attacks. He knew he couldn't fight head-on, he could only rely on his agility and quick reflexes to buy time and look for an opportunity. Gwen, Peter exclaimed in surprise. Mary Jane was being pushed back relentlessly and the dark energy began to dissipate. Peter knew he had found the right direction. He had to continue the attack until Mary Jane was defeated. Peter looked in the direction of the sound and saw Mary Jane lying on the ground. Her body was bound by black energy, but she remained conscious, her eyes filled with worry and encouragement. The black energy within the body has been completely eliminated. Mary Jane also recovered, and black energy once again gathered around her. She walked step by step toward Peter, her eyes filled with murderous intent. Mary Jane's attacks grew increasingly fierce, black energy churning around her, seemingly threatening to devour everything. Peter felt his strength rapidly dwindling, his breathing became rapid and his movements slowed. Just then, from a corner of the laboratory, a faint voice came, "Peter, give up." "Peter, you've lost," Harry said smugly. "You've lost your powers, you're no longer Spider-Man. Now you're just an ant to be slaughtered." "The game is over, Peter." Mary Jane raised the dagger in her hand. "Prepare for your death." Mary Jane let out a painful groan, and a surge of black energy rippled through her body. Peter seized the opportunity and launched another attack, raining blows upon Mary Jane. Gwen, dressed in her Spider-Man suit, stood before him, her face filled with anger and determination. "Peter, I'm here to help you." "Peter, you're too naive," Harry said with a sneer. "Do you really think you can beat her? You overestimate yourself." Harry stood aside, watching the game with great interest. He had absorbed Peter's power and felt stronger than ever before. He reveled in the thrill of this power as if the whole world was under his control. At this critical moment, the laboratory door was kicked open again and a figure flew in, crashing heavily into Mary Jane. "Peter, I believe in you." Mary Jane's voice grew weaker and weaker. "You can definitely defeat her." Mary Jane, Peter's heart skipped a beat. He saw hope and felt strength. He lunged forward, dodging Mary Jane's attack and then punched her in the stomach. Peter struggled to his feet, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Harry was stronger than he had imagined. He was no match for him. Peter took a deep breath, his eyes hardening. He knew he couldn't fall, he had to fight to the very end for Mary Jane, for justice, for this world. Just then Harry suddenly made his move. He struck Peter in the back with a palm strike, sending him flying. Peter ignored Harry, his attention was entirely focused on Mary Jane. He knew Harry was the real mastermind, but right now he had to deal with the immediate crisis first. Mary Jane was thrown back, the black energy dissipating from her body. Peter looked closely and realized that the person who had flown in was Gwen Stacy. "Give up, Peter." Mary Jane's voice was cold and ruthless. "You have no chance." "Gwen, how could you?" Before Peter could react, Gwen had already charged at Mary Jane, and the two engaged in a fierce battle. Gwen replied, "I know, Peter, I'll do my best." Peter's mind raced. Gwen's appearance was completely unexpected. Gwen, his high school sweetheart, had tragically died in an accident. Was it a hallucination? He couldn't believe it. Gwen's movements, her eyes, everything seemed so real. Peter and Gwen team up to fight Mary Jane, but Mary Jane, empowered by dark energy, gains immense strength and speed, gradually overwhelming Peter and Gwen. Harry watched coldly from the sidelines, a sinister smile playing on his lips. He seemed unconcerned, as if everything was within his grasp. "Mary Jane, are you all right?" Peter asked with concern. "Ha, Peter, you think you can win?" Harry scoffed. "You're so naive." Peter ignored Harry's provocations, he focused on the fight. He knew he couldn't lose, he had to protect Mary Jane, protect Gwen, and protect the city. Mary Jane shook her head, looking at Peter and Gwen with confusion in her eyes. What happened to me?" The pendant shattered upon hitting the ground, and the black energy dissipated instantly. Mary Jane regained her senses and looked around blankly, unaware of what had happened. "Harry, what exactly did you do to Mary Jane?" Peter roared, knowing that Harry was the mastermind behind it all. Peter was about to explain when he suddenly felt a gust of wind behind him. He turned around abruptly and saw Harry coming down towards him. "Zai's hub." He immediately shouted to Gwen, "Gwen, attack her pendant." Gwen understood immediately. She seized the opportunity and delivered a flying kick to Mary Jane's chest, sending the pendant flying. The battle between Gwen and Mary Jane was exceptionally fierce. The black energy clashed with the golden light emanating from Gwen, producing a piercing sound. The laboratory equipment was shaken violently, with shards of glass flying everywhere. Harry was incredibly fast and Peter didn't have time to dodge. He was punched in the stomach by Harry and he flew backward, crashing heavily to the ground. Peter leaped into the fray, joining the battle. He skillfully dodged Mary Jane's attacks while searching for an opportunity to dispel the dark energy within her. "I feel powerless." "Harry, why did you do that?" Peter asked. Peter knew he couldn't just stand by and watch. He had to join the fight, but at the same time he had to be wary of Harry, his former friend who had now become a dangerous enemy. Harry walked step by step toward Peter, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Peter, the game is over." "You're playing with fire?" Peter gritted his teeth. He had to stop the chaos as soon as possible. "Peter!" Mary Jane and Gwen exclaimed. Peter stared at the scene before him, filled with confusion and shock. How did Gwen get here? How did she possess Spider-Man's abilities? What was going on? He took a deep breath and shouted to Gwen, "Gwen, be careful. Mary Jane is being controlled. Try not to hurt her." Just then, Peter noticed a black pendant hanging around Mary Jane's neck. The pendant emanated a strong black energy, seemingly the key to controlling Mary Jane. Harry smiled dismissively. "I just gave her a little help, allowing her to release the darkness within her." Peter struggled to his feet, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, but his eyes remained resolute. "Why?" Harry sneered. "Because of you, you took everything from me. My father, my company, my friends, now I'll make you pay." "You're wrong, Harry," Peter said. "I never intended to take everything from you. I just wanted to protect the people I love and protect this city." "Enough with the nonsense," Harry roared. "Today you must die." Harry lunged at Peter again, and Peter knew he had no way out. He had to fight to the end. Just then, a commotion arose outside the laboratory door and a familiar voice rang out. "Harry Osborn, you're under arrest." Peter and Harry both looked toward the door, where a group of people rushed in, led by Sheriff George Stacy, Gwen's father. "Father?" Gwen exclaimed in surprise. George Stacy walked up to Harry and said coldly, Harry Osborn, you are suspected of multiple crimes. I am now arresting you as the commissioner of the New York City Police Department." Harry's expression changed drastically. He hadn't expected the police to appear so suddenly. He glanced at Peter, then at George Stacy, a flicker of despair in his eyes. "No," Harry whispered, "I won't give up." He suddenly pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed the button. A piercing alarm suddenly blared in the laboratory and red lights flashed incessantly. "Oh no," Peter exclaimed, "he's about to activate the self-destruct mechanism." "Self-destruct device?" George Stacy's face darkened, and he immediately ordered his men to evacuate the crowd. Peter gritted his teeth. He knew he had to stop Harry, or the entire laboratory, even the entire city, would be reduced to ashes. He endured the excruciating pain in his abdomen and walked step by step toward Harry. "Harry, go for it, it's pointless," Peter urged. Harry acted as if he hadn't heard him. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared intently at Peter as if he wanted to tear him apart. "Peter Parker, die!" Harry roared, pressing the button on the device again. The alarm blared louder, the laboratory walls began to shake, and rubble continued to fall from the ceiling. Peter knew time was running out. He had to subdue Harry as quickly as possible. He took a deep breath, channeled all his energy, activated his spider sense to its fullest extent, and everything around him began to slow down. He seized the opportunity and charged at Harry, kicking him in the chin with the diary. Harry screamed as the device flew out of his hand, but Peter reacted quickly and caught it. He glanced at the countdown timer on the device. Less than 10 seconds remained. Peter didn't have time to think. He grabbed the device, rushed out of the lab, and threw it far away. Boom. After a loud bang, the laboratory was engulfed in flames. Peter stood at a distance, watching the laboratory engulfed in flames, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He knew that his friendship with Harry had been completely destroyed in the explosion. The police brought the scene under control and paramedics arrived to treat Peter's wounds. Mary Jane ran over and hugged Peter tightly, her eyes filled with worry. "Peter, are you all right?" Peter gently patted Mary Jane's back, reassuring her, "I'm fine, don't worry." 17. Gwen also came over, her eyes filled with complex emotions, worry, gratitude, and a hint of indescribable sadness. "Peter, thank you," Gwen said. "You saved us again." Peter smiled and said, "It's what I should do." Requesting 0 flowers, Peter smiled and said, "You flatter me, I just did what I was supposed to do." "By the way, Peter," George Stacy suddenly asked, "what are your plans for the future?" "Gwen, what brings you here?" Peter asked. He looked into the distance, knowing that his responsibility went far beyond this. He would continue to protect this city and those he loved forever. Peter paused for a moment, then nodded and said, "I will." "You can try to let go," Gwen said. "I know it's hard, but you have to try to accept reality." A smile appeared on GC's face and she said, "Then it's settled, I'll be waiting for you." Although the explosion caused no casualties, it resulted in significant losses for the Osborn group. Harry was arrested by the police and will face legal judgment. A few days later, Peter sat in a coffee shop looking out at the bustling traffic, lost in thought. Peter smiled and said, "You're welcome. It's what I should do." George Stacy smiled mysteriously and said, "Join the police force, Peter. I believe you will become an excellent police officer." Peter scratched his head somewhat sheepishly and said, "You flatter me." Peter smiled and said, "I'm fine, just a little tired." Peter paused for a moment, then said, "I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll continue my studies, or maybe I'll find a job." George Stacy personally cooked a sumptuous dinner, during which he repeatedly expressed his gratitude to Peter. Gwen sat down opposite Peter and watched him quietly. "Hi, Peter. I came to see you," Gwen said. "You haven't been to school for the past few days and I was worried about you." "No," George Stacy said earnestly, "you've done far more than you realize. You're a true hero and we should all learn from you." That evening, Peter went to Gwen's house. Peter's feelings were complicated. He felt sorry for Harry's fate but also helpless about his own choice. He knew that there was no turning back between him and Harry. "What suggestion?" Peter asked. "Oh, right," Gwen suddenly said, as if remembering something. "My father asked me to tell you that he thanked you for saving his and my lives." "Peter, you're a true hero," George Stacy said. "You saved my life and Gwen's, and you saved this city." "Peter," Gwen hesitated for a moment before saying, "I know you're upset, but you can't go on like this. Peter looked up and saw Gwen, 0. Peter hesitated for a moment then said, "Okay, I'll go." Peter watched Gwen's departing figure, a warm feeling welling up inside him. He knew that no matter what happened, he was not alone. He still had friends, family, and people he needed to protect. After saying that, Gwen got up and left the coffee shop. And Gwen continued, "He said he hopes you can come to my house for dinner so he can thank you in person." Peter sighed and said, "I know, but I don't know what to do." "If you haven't thought it through yet," George Stacy said, "I have a suggestion." A familiar voice interrupted Peter's thoughts. Peter began his police career, studying hard and working diligently, quickly earning the recognition of his colleagues. After dinner, Peter left Gwen's house and walked home, his mind filled with thoughts. Joining the police force was a completely new challenge for him, but also a brand new beginning. Peter looked at George Stacy in surprise, unsure of what to say for a moment. He fell into deep thought. After hanging up the phone, Harry felt even heavier. He didn't know where to go from here. He felt lost and helpless. "Norman Osborn, what have you done to me?" Harry hissed, his eyes filled with anger and pain. "Peter, I know this is an important decision for you." George Stacy noticed Peter's hesitation. "You don't need to give me an answer right now. You can think about it carefully." Meanwhile, inside the Osborn Corporation building, Harry Osborn sat in his CEO's office chair, his face filled with gloom. Since he injected himself with the modified serum, his physical condition had been deteriorating. His strength was growing, but his sanity was also becoming increasingly fragile. "Thank you, Officer Stacy," Peter said gratefully. "Of course, I can give you time," the voice said, "but you'd better make a decision as soon as possible because your time is running out." "Who I am is not important. What is important is that I can help you control the power within you and make you a true powerhouse," the voice said. Joining the police force, for him, it was a completely new challenge and a brand new beginning. "I need time to think about it," Harry said. The next day, Peter went to the police station and decided to accept George Stacy's suggestion to join the police force. Harry fell into deep thought. He craved power and revenge, but he didn't know whether this mysterious voice was trustworthy. However, Peter's peaceful life didn't last long. One night, while on patrol, he received a report of a robbery. Harry hesitated. He knew he was in a dangerous situation and needed help, but he was also afraid of being taken advantage of. "Welcome, Peter." 3.2 George Stacy warmly welcomed Peter's arrival. "I believe you will become an excellent police officer." Peter fell into a long silence, George Schroeder's advice echoing in his mind. Joining the police force, it was indeed a path he had never considered. He had always protected the city as Spider-Man 800, fighting crime in the shadows, but becoming a police officer meant he would uphold justice in the sunlight in a different capacity. "Who are you?" Harry asked warily. Suddenly, Harry's phone rang. He answered, and an unfamiliar voice came from the other end. "Harry Osborn, I know your situation. I can help." "What do you want?" Harry asked. "What I want is very simple, your loyalty," the voice said. "As long as you submit to me, I can make you the most powerful person in the world." "Officer Stacy, Peter was about to refuse, but then hesitated. He realized that becoming a police officer might allow him to better protect the city and also allow him to act more openly and honestly. Peter arrived at the scene and discovered that the robber was none other than Harry Osborn. "Harry, what are you doing?" Peter looked at Harry incredulously. "Peter, you don't need to worry about me," Harry said coldly. "This is my own choice." "Harry, wake up, this isn't you," Peter tried to persuade Harry. "Shut up," Harry roared. "I'm not the Harry I used to be, I'm the Green Goblin." After saying that, Harry waved the hang glider in his hand and launched an attack on Peter. Peter had no choice but to transform into Spider-Man and engage in a fierce battle with Harry. The two chased each other in the sky above the city. Their combat destructive power was extremely strong and many buildings were destroyed. "Harry, stop, you'll ruin the city if you keep doing this," Peter pleaded, dodging Harry's attacks. "I'm going to destroy this city, I'm going to make everyone pay for my father's death," Harry shouted madly. Peter was filled with grief. He knew there was no turning back between him and Harry. The battle continues, Peter and Harry's figures intertwine in the sky above the city, their fates to be finally judged in this fight. Peter knew that Harry had been completely consumed by the Green Goblin personality. He was heartbroken, but he had to do everything in his power because he knew that if he didn't stop Harry, the city would suffer even greater destruction. Spider-Man skillfully evaded Green Goblin's attacks, his webs shooting out as he weaved between skyscrapers. Green Goblin's glider was incredibly fast, and accompanied by maniacal laughter, he relentlessly hurled bombs at Spider-Man. The flashes from the explosions illuminated their distorted faces, creating an apocalyptic spectacle. "Harry, wake up!" Peter shouted, his voice weak and feeble amidst the explosion. "Your father wouldn't want to see you like this." "Shut up," Green Goblin roared. "My father was killed by you hypocritical heroes, I'll make you pay." The Green Goblin's attacks became more frenzied, and the bombs grew increasingly powerful. Peter felt the pressure mounting. He had to find a way to stop Harry without hurting him. Suddenly, Peter noticed that the Green Goblin's glider was slightly unstable. A thought struck him and he came up with a plan. Spider-Man shot out a web that wrapped around Green Goblin's hang glider, then pulled hard. Green Goblin's hang glider lost its balance and began to shake violently. "What are you doing?" Green Goblin shouted in terror. Spider-Man didn't answer. He continued pulling on the webs, drawing Green Goblin's glider toward himself. Green Goblin realized Spider-Man's intentions and struggled desperately to break free from the webs. The two remained locked in a stalemate in the air, the hang glider teetering precariously on the verge of crashing at any moment. "Harry, give up!" Peter shouted. "You've already lost." "I won't lose," Green Goblin roared, and he suddenly jumped off the hang glider and pounced on Spider-Man. Spider-Man was prepared. He shot out a web that entangled Green Goblin, then hurled him forcefully, sending Green Goblin flying to the rooftop of a building. The Green Goblin crashed heavily to the ground, letting out a painful groan. Spider-Man landed beside Green Goblin, and seeing his pained expression, he was filled with helplessness and sorrow. "Harry, I don't want to hurt you," Peter said. "We're friends." "Friends?" Green Goblin sneered. "You think we're still friends? You took everything from me." "I didn't take everything from you, you gave it all up yourself," Peter retorted. "You've been blinded by hatred, you've lost yourself." "Shut up," Green Goblin roared again. "What right do you have to lecture me? You're just a lowly reptile." Green Goblin struggled to stand up, but his body was so badly injured that he was unable to move. Peter was torn by Harry's pain. He knew he had to stop Harry, but he also knew Harry was his best friend. Just as Peter was hesitating, a strange voice suddenly came from afar. "It seems our Mr. Green Goblin is in a bit of trouble." Peter looked in the direction of the sound and saw a man in a black suit standing on the roof of a building not far away. The man had a strange smile on his face and was holding a strange weapon in his hand. "Who are you?" Peter asked warily. "Who I am is not important," the man said. "What is important is that I can help you solve your current problem." "What do you want to do?" Peter asked. "I want to help you get rid of the Green Goblin," the man said. "That way you won't have to be in such a predicament anymore." Peter looked at the weapon in the man's hand and a sense of foreboding rose in his heart. "I don't need your help," Peter said. "I can handle it myself." "Really?" the man smiled. "Are you sure you can handle it? The Green Goblin is very powerful. You'll probably have a hard time dealing with him alone." "It's none of your business," Peter said. "This is between him and me." "All right," the man shrugged. "Since you put it that way, I won't force you, but I hope you won't regret it." After saying that, the man turned and left. Peter watched the man's departing figure, filled with doubt. He didn't know who the man was nor what his purpose was, but he had a feeling that this man was dangerous. Peter turned his head and looked at the Green Goblin lying on the ground, his heart filled with helplessness. He knew he had to make a decision quickly or things might get even worse. Just then, Green Goblin suddenly let out a painful groan. Peter rushed over to check and found that Green Goblin's body was undergoing changes. The Green Goblin's skin turned green, his eyes turned red, and sharp spikes sprouted from his body. His body also became stronger, exuding an ugly aura. "What's going on?" Peter asked in alarm. The Green Goblin didn't answer. Instead, he let out a beastly roar and pounced on Peter. Peter quickly dodged. The Green Goblin's attack speed was extremely fast and its power was much greater than before. Peter realized that the Green Goblin was no longer human, he had become a monster. Peter and the Green Goblin engaged in another fierce battle. The Green Goblin's strength and speed had been greatly enhanced, and Peter gradually felt overwhelmed. Just then, Peter suddenly felt a sharp pain. He looked down and saw that his chest had been slashed by the Green Goblin's claws. Blood flowed down the wound, and Peter felt a wave of dizziness and cold. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the Green Goblin launched a fierce attack on Peter, who was unable to defend himself and was knocked to the ground. The Green Goblin stood in front of Peter, a sinister smile on his face. "It's over, Spider-Man," Green Goblin said. "You lost." The Green Goblin raised its claws, preparing to deliver a fatal blow to Peter. "You're welcome," Batman said calmly. "It's what I should do." "Damn it," Green Goblin roared, "you disgusting insects." Who are you?" Peter asked, panting heavily. Peter struggled to his feet and joined the fight. "But why are you helping me?" Peter asked. "We don't know each other." "Who are you?" Peter asked weakly. It was that mysterious man. A chaotic battle ensued on the rooftop. How would the fight end? Who exactly is this mysterious man, and what are his motives? Before the man could finish speaking, the Green Goblin attacked again, and the man and the Green Goblin engaged in another fierce battle. Taking advantage of the smoke from the explosion, Green Goblin turned around and tried to escape. Peter watched the fight between the man and the Green Goblin, his mind filled with questions. He didn't know who the man was nor why he was helping him, but he knew he had to survive. He still had many things to do. "I'm here to help you," the man said. "My name is—" The police arrested Green Goblin and took him to the police station. He suddenly pulled a pumpkin bomb from his waist and threw it at the man. Peter watched Batman's departing figure, his heart filled with admiration. He knew he would never forget this night nor this mysterious hero. Green Goblin's face turned deathly pale. He knew he was finished. "Trying to run?" the man sneered. His figure flashed, and he instantly appeared in front of Green Goblin, knocking him to the ground with a punch. The man used his weapon to block Green Window's attack, then kicked Green Goblin away. Although the Green Goblin's power had increased, he seemed somewhat overwhelmed by the mysterious man's attacks. He was repeatedly repelled, and several wounds appeared on his body. After saying that, Batman turned and left. Peter dragged his weary body home. He took a hot shower, changed into clean clothes, and then lay down on the bed, closing his eyes. Batman ignored Peter's surprise, turned to Green Goblin, and said coldly, "Norman Osborn, your crimes have been exposed. Surrender now." Batman paused for a moment, then said, "Because we are all heroes." Peter looked at Batman, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Batman," Peter said. "You saved me." Peter gritted his teeth, enduring the excruciating pain, and struggled to his feet. He felt dizzy and everything before his eyes blurred, but he knew he couldn't fall. He had to fight. Peter was stunned. Batman? He never expected that this mysterious man would be the famous Batman. At this moment, the sound of sirens grew louder as they approached. Several police cars quickly arrived at the scene. 014501427 Chinese letter 200 3,520,090. Who are you? Green Goblin asked in terror.
Judge.
The man reacted quickly, dodging the bomb by sidestepping it. The bomb exploded in midair with a loud bang. The man didn't answer. He was solely focused on fighting the Green Goblin. His movements were swift and precise, each strike brimming with power. Peter could tell that this man was a well-trained warrior. Green Goblin struggled to get up, but the man stepped on his chest, rendering him immobile. The man looked down at him and said slowly, "I am Batman." At this critical moment, a black figure suddenly appeared and blocked Peter's path. "I understand, Aunt May," Peter said. "That's good." Medvedeva breathed a sigh of relief. "I saw the news last night. It really scared me to death." "Are you coming to my place today?" Aunt May asked. "It's all right, Aunt May," Peter comforted her. "It's all over now." Peter suddenly felt sleepy and slowly fell asleep. "Peter, are you all right?" Aunt May asked with concern. Peter suddenly sped up and flew off into the distance. He knew a new adventure awaited him. His mind kept replaying the events of the night. Green Goblin's madness, Batman's appearance, and the line, "Because we are all heroes." "Okay," Aunt May said, "then be careful." He knew he was no longer alone. He had Batman and other heroes who protected the world together. Point 0. Just then, Peter suddenly heard a loud bang behind him. "Looks like you're here to cause trouble," Peter sneered, cracking his knuckles. Perfect timing, I'm not in a good mood today. He flew over tall buildings, over streets, and over crowds of people. He knew his responsibility was not over yet. He had to continue protecting the city and the people he loved. No, Aunt May, Peter said, I have something to do today. After hanging up the phone, Peter changed into his Spider-Man suit and left home. Suddenly, Peter saw smoke rising from a building in the distance. His heart tightened and he immediately flew towards the building. Peter whirled around and saw a huge figure plummeting from the sky, crashing heavily onto the roof. Dust billowed and gravel flew everywhere. Peter quickly took a few steps back, squinting as he tried to make out the figure's face. He knew that this was the world he wanted to protect, a world full of hope and beauty. He turned on the TV and saw a news report about last night's events. The news report revealed the Green Goblin's true identity and stated that he had confessed to his crimes. Peter glanced at the news, his heart filled with emotion. He knew that justice would ultimately triumph over evil. He saw the smiles on people's faces and heard the joyful laughter of children. The figure did not answer but slowly raised the giant axe in its hand, pointing it at Peter. The axe blade reflected a blinding light in the sunlight, and a chilling aura emanated from it. Once the dust had settled, Peter could see clearly that standing before him was a burly figure clad in heavy armor and wielding a massive axe. The armor was covered in scratches and dents as if it had witnessed countless fierce battles. A helmet obscured his face, revealing only two cold eyes that gleamed with a chilling light. "Who are you?" Peter asked warily. 014501427 Chinese letter 203,520,410. Peter flew to the vicinity of the building and discovered that the top floor was on fire. He quickly landed on the roof to prepare for a rescue. Just then, Peter's phone rang. He picked it up and saw it was May calling. "I'm fine, Aunt May," Peter said. "I'm perfectly fine. Please give me flowers." He didn't know what had happened, but he knew he had to go and see. The next morning, Peter woke up feeling much better. He got up, washed, and then ate a hearty breakfast. Peter swung among the city's skyscrapers, feeling the power of the wind. He suddenly felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Before he finished speaking, Peter charged towards the figure like an arrow released from a bow. He swung his fist, sending a fierce gust of wind through it and slammed it hard into the figure's head. However, the figure moved with surprising agility. He dodged Peter's attack by sidestepping and at the same time swung his giant axe, aiming for Peter's waist. Peter leaped back, narrowly avoiding the attack. The giant axe grazed his armor, leaving a deep gash. 440, you've got some skills. A hint of surprise flashed in Peter's eyes. However, that's not enough. Peter launched another attack. This time, he used his spider sense to predict the figure's attack trajectory. He nimbly dodged the giant axe's swings while continuously attacking the figure with his fists and spider silk. Although the figure possessed great strength, it was not as agile as Peter. Under Peter's relentless attacks, it gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. "Damn little bug," the figure roared, suddenly unleashing a powerful force that sent Peter flying. Peter fell heavily to the ground, feeling as if all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. He struggled to his feet, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with rage. "Who exactly are you?" Peter asked through gritted teeth. The figure did not answer but instead raised its giant axe again and charged towards Peter. Peter knew that this time he had to go all out. He took a deep breath, mustered all his strength, and faced the figure. A fierce battle unfolded on the rooftop. Peter, relying on his agility and spider-like senses, constantly dodged the giant axe's attacks while searching for an opportunity to counterattack. The figure possessed great strength but lacked skill. His attacks, though fierce, were easily predicted by Peter. As the battle progressed, Peter gradually gained the upper hand. He used his spider silk to entangle the figure's legs, rendering it immobile. Then, he leaped high into the air and slammed a powerful punch into the figure's helmet. The helmet made a cracking sound and a gap appeared. Peter pressed his advantage and a barrage of attacks rained down on the figure. The figure let out a painful groan and finally collapsed to the ground. Peter, panting heavily, walked up to the figure and ripped off his helmet. Beneath the helmet, a familiar face was revealed. "Dr. Otto," Peter exclaimed in surprise. Dr. Otto, Peter's university professor and a scientist he had always admired. Peter, Dr. Otto said weakly, I'm sorry. What happened? Peter asked anxiously. Why did you attack me? Dr. Otto's voice trailed off, I can't control myself. Can't control yourself? Peter frowned. What do you mean? My robotic arms, Dr. Otto said with difficulty, they've taken control of my mind. Peter then noticed that Dr. Otto had 4 robotic arms attached to his back. These robotic arms gleamed with a metallic sheen and looked incredibly high-tech. These 1.1 robotic arms, Peter murmured to himself, what exactly are they? They are my inventions, Dr. Otto explained. They were originally intended to help humanity, but they've gone out of control, Peter asked. Dr. Otto nodded. They gained their own consciousness, they took control of my body and turned me into a monster. Peter looked at the once respected scientist before him, now a puppet controlled by a robotic arm, and his heart was filled with sorrow. A fierce battle unfolded within the abandoned factory. Peter, relying on his spider sense and agility, constantly dodged Dr. Otto's attacks. The mechanical arm possessed immense power, each strike carrying devastating force. Peter dared not confront it head-on and could only seek opportunities to counterattack. He glanced at Dr. Otto and said, I'm leaving now, wait for me here, I'll be back in a bit. Haha, help me, Dr. Otto laughed, his laughter filled with sarcasm. You think you can do it? These robotic arms are already one with me, they are my strength 203, my future. Why did he help Dr. Otto? Dr. Otto, Peter said softly, I will help you. I'll help you, Peter said. I'll help you get rid of the robotic arm. Peter swung on his web, weaving between skyscrapers, the night wind whistling past his ears. Dr. Otto's words echoed in his mind. Robotic arms, out of control technology, these words unsettled him. He had to find a solution quickly, he couldn't let Otto continue to be controlled by robotic arms. Really, Peter said firmly, I will definitely find a way to get you back to normal. Really, he asked. After saying that, Peter leaped into the night and disappeared. The owner of those eyes is none other than Batman. Peter, what are you doing here? Dr. Otto's voice was cold and mechanical. He landed on the rooftop of a building, his gaze sweeping over the city's nightscape. Suddenly, he noticed a faint light flickering from an abandoned factory in the distance. Peter's spider sense throbbed as if warning him of lurking danger. It seems you're still stubborn, Peter said helplessly, realizing that a peaceful solution was no longer an option. Batman stood on the rooftop of a tall building, watching Peter's departing figure, lost in thought. Dr. Otto looked up at Peter, a glimmer of hope flashing in his eyes. Dr. Otto, Peter called out. Perhaps we can find some clues there, Peter muttered to himself, then shot out another web, swinging towards the abandoned factory. Just who is this Spider-Man? The factory was dimly lit and filled with the acrid smell of chemicals. Peter proceeded cautiously, his spider sense constantly sounding alarms. He arrived at a huge workshop and saw Dr. Otto standing in front of a pile of equipment, his back to him. 4 robotic arms were swinging as if conducting some kind of experiment. Dr. Otto's robotic arm suddenly fired several laser beams at Peter. Peter nimbly dodged and the laser beams struck the wall behind him, creating a huge explosion. Dr. Otto whirled around, his mechanical arm screeching. His eyes were vacant as if Zhu had lost his soul. Unbeknownst to him, a pair of eyes were silently watching him from behind. Peter swung on his web and quickly left the scene. He needed to find a place to think carefully about how to help Dr. Otto. Just then, a police siren suddenly sounded in the distance. Peter knew the police had arrived. No, they are your shackles, Peter retorted. They are destroying you. Batman removes his mask, revealing a face Peter Parker recognizes, Bruce Wayne. You are suspected of participating in illegal experiments and attacking Dr. Otto, the agent explained. He sat in the corner of his cell, feeling utterly frustrated and lost. Suddenly, the cell door opened and a familiar figure walked in. He shot out spider silk, which entangled Dr. Otto's mechanical arm, attempting to restrict his movements. However, the mechanical arm was too strong and the silk was quickly broken. Peter had to change tactics. He used the silk to construct a complex trap within the factory and then lured Dr. Otto into it. Peter was taken to SHIELD headquarters and detained in a special cell. He was completely baffled as to why he had become a criminal. He was the one who saved Dr. Otto, so why was he being arrested? Peter, Dr. Otto said weakly, "Thank you." As expected, Dr. Otto fell for the trap. He was entangled in spider silk and unable to move. Peter seized the opportunity to rush forward and punched Dr. Otto in the face. Dr. Otto let out a painful groan, and the strength of his mechanical arm seemed to have weakened somewhat. "Dr. Otto, are you all right?" an agent asked as he approached Dr. Otto. Just then, the factory gate was suddenly kicked open and a group of people in black uniforms rushed in. They were agents of SHIELD investigating a tip. "What?" Peter looked bewildered. "Why are you arresting me?" Peter continued his attack, his fists and feet raining down on Dr. Otto. Dr. Otto's mechanical arm drooped limply and his eyes gradually regained their clarity. The agents looked at each other, seemingly unable to believe what Dr. Otto had said. "I'm here to get you out of here," Bruce said calmly. "I'm fine," Dr. Otto replied weakly. "Spider-Man saved me." "I've been watching you," Bruce explained. "I know you wouldn't do something like that." "Take them away," the lead agent ordered. "It's all a misunderstanding," Peter protested. "I'm here to help Dr. Otto." "It's not certain yet," Bruce shook his head, "but I'll find out." "Dr. Otto, are you all right?" Peter asked with concern. "Who is it?" Peter pressed. "Bruce, what are you doing here?" Peter asked in surprise. Peter was taken away by the agents, leaving Dr. Otto alone in the abandoned factory. He watched Peter's departing figure, a complex expression flashing in his eyes. He didn't know what to do next, nor what Peter's fate would be. "Spider-Man, you're under arrest," an agent said, pointing at Peter. "Save me," Peter was even more puzzled. "How did you know I was here?" Two agents stepped forward and handcuffed Peter. Peter struggled, but to no avail. Bruce pulled a knife from his pocket and pried open the cell door. "I know," Bruce nodded. "I found out someone framed you." "Come with me," Bruce said. "I'm fine." Dr. Otto shook his head. "The effects of the robotic arm are fading." "But they say I attacked Dr. Otto." Peter was still somewhat worried. A warm feeling welled up in Peter's heart. He knew that Bruce had always trusted him. "Enough with the nonsense," the agent said impatiently. "We'll talk inside the station." "Batman!" Peter exclaimed in surprise. Peter followed Bruce out of the cell and the two stealthily made their way down the corridor. SHIELD headquarters was heavily guarded with surveillance cameras and patrolling guards everywhere. Peter and Bruce carefully avoided their sight, and thanks to Bruce's experience and Peter's spider sense, they successfully evaded all the surveillance and guards. They arrived at a locked door that led to SHIELD's underground parking garage. "This door has an electronic lock," Peter said. "Leave it to me." Bruce took out a small electronic device, connected it to the door lock, and began cracking the code. A few seconds later, the door lock clicked open. Peter and Bruce quickly entered the underground parking lot and found a black sedan. Bruce started the car. Peter got into the passenger seat. "Where are we going?" Peter asked. "Let's get out of here first," Bruce replied. The car drove out of SHIELD headquarters and disappeared into the night. In the car, Bruce explained what had happened to Peter. It turned out that the person who framed Peter was Kingpin, a notorious mob boss. Kingpin had always seen Spider-Man as a thorn in his side, and this time he bribed agents within SHIELD to create the illusion that Peter had attacked Dr. Otto with the aim of bringing Peter to justice. "Check that Kingpin, I'll make him pay," Peter said through gritted teeth. "I know you're angry, but now is not the time," Bruce advised. "We must first find evidence to prove your innocence." "But Dr. Otto's testimony," Peter said. "Dr. Otto is under Kingpin's control," Bruce interrupted Peter. "His testimony is not credible." Peter fell silent. He knew Bruce was right. The situation was very unfavorable for him, and he had to calm down and find a solution. "Where are we going now?" Peter asked. "Let's go to my safe house," Bruce replied. "It's safe there, we can hide there for a while." The car sped through the night, but Peter's heart was heavy. He didn't know what to do next or how to prove his innocence. Upon arriving at the safe house, Bruce began investigating Kingpin's crimes. Peter waited anxiously nearby, feeling as if he were trapped in a giant spider web, unable to move. Time ticked by and Peter grew increasingly anxious. He didn't know how much longer he had to wait or whether he would ever be able to clear his name. Suddenly, Ruth's voice broke the silence. "I've found some clues," Bruce said. "Kingpin's criminal evidence is stored on his private computer." "How can we get that evidence?" Peter asked. "We need to infiltrate Kingpin's office," Bruce replied. "It's dangerous." "Are you sure you want to come with me?" Peter nodded without hesitation. "Of course I will make Kingpin pay." Bruce looked into Peter's resolute eyes, his heart filled with admiration. He knew Peter was a brave and righteous man, and he would definitely help Peter clear his name and bring Jin to justice. 014501427 Feilu 203,540,460. They devised a detailed plan to infiltrate Kingpin's offices. It would be a dangerous operation, but Peter and Bruce were both confident. They believed justice will ultimately prevail over evil. "Don't get too cocky, Spider-Man," Kingpin roared, pulling a submachine gun from under his desk and firing a burst of bullets at Peter. "Looks like you were prepared, Kingpin." Bruce's voice was deep and calm as he drew a batarang from his waist, twirling it deftly between his fingers. "But do you think this will stop us?" "Kingpin, you can't take this," Peter sneered, flicking his web to snatch the submachine gun from Kingpin's hand. "Damn it," Kingpin cursed, turning to run away. "Trying to run, not so easy." Peter shot out a web which wrapped around Kingpin's ankle, slamming him heavily to the ground. The office was in chaos, with desks and chairs overturned and documents scattered all over the floor. Peter and Bruce stood back to back, warily watching their surrounding enemies. Despite being outnumbered, they were not at a disadvantage at all, but instead grew stronger with each battle. Peter used his spider sense to bypass all the security cameras and silently took care of several guards. Bruce, on the other hand, used his high-tech equipment to hack into the building's security system. Kingpin steadied himself, a cold smile creeping across his fat face. "Just the two of you? You overestimate yourselves?" With a wave of his hand, the hidden door to the office opened and more than a dozen bodyguards in black suits emerged, each armed with a weapon, surrounding Peter and Bruce. Peter reacted quickly, shooting out spider silk that formed a web in the air, blocking the bullet attack. Just then, the office door suddenly opened and Kingpin walked in, requesting flowers. Peter and Bruce exchanged a glance. A major battle was about to erupt. "Kingpin, your men seem a bit weak," Peter taunted Kingpin while dodging attacks. The following evening, Peter and Bruce, disguised, arrived at Kingpin's office building. Security was extremely tight, with surveillance cameras and patrolling guards everywhere. Bruce walked up to Kingpin, looking down at him. "Kingpin, the game is over." "Kingpin, your good days are over." Peter landed, did a backflip, and stood firmly in front of Kingpin, his tone full of disdain. "Spider-Man, Batman!" Kingpin roared, his massive body surprisingly agile as he lunged at Bruce, who was closest to him. Peter reacted swiftly, shooting out a web that stuck to the back of Kingpin's suit and with a sharp tug pulled Kingpin off balance. Peter was agile and nimble, weaving through the bodyguards with ease. Every punch and kick carried immense power, leaving them utterly defeated. Bruce, on the other hand, was more composed. His moves were precise and ruthless, each strike aimed at vital points, giving his opponent no chance to breathe. Kingpin's face was ashen. He hadn't expected Spider-Man and Batman to be so formidable. Watching his bodyguards fall one by one, a sense of panic crept into his heart. They successfully broke into Kingpin's office and found his personal computer. Bruce inserted a USB drive into the computer and began copying evidence of Kingpin's crimes. "Spider-Man, Batman," Kingpin gritted his teeth. "How dare you break into my office?" "HMPH, we'll see." Kingpin gave the order and the bodyguards swarmed forward. Peter and Bruce were not to be outdone. The two worked together seamlessly like two ferocious beasts, and a fierce battle ensued in the cramped office. Kingpin struggled to his feet only to find himself firmly bound by spider silk, unable to move. He raised his head, glaring fiercely at Peter and Bruce. "You'll regret this," Peter sneered. "Regret? I think you're the one who'll regret it." He plugged the USB drive into the computer and began downloading Kingpin's criminal evidence. After the download was complete, Peter unplugged the USB drive and nodded to Bruce. "Let's go." The two quickly left Kingpin's office and disappeared into the night. Kingpin was left in the empty office, struggling angrily but to no avail. He knew that this time he was completely finished. After Peter and Bruce returned to the safe house, they immediately handed over the evidence of Kinjo's crimes to the police. The police quickly launched an operation and arrested Kinjo and all his men. Peter was finally exonerated and regained his freedom. Standing atop a high building overlooking the city's night view, he was filled with emotion. "Thanks to you this time, Bruce," Peter said. "You're welcome, Peter," Bruce replied. "You are a true hero and I believe you can overcome any difficulty." Peter smiled. He knew Bruce was right. He was a hero and he bore the responsibility of protecting the city. He would continue to work hard to safeguard the peace and tranquility of this city. However, Peter was unaware that this was only the beginning. Greater challenges awaited him. He would face even more powerful enemies and endure even more brutal battles. The next day, Peter went to school as usual. When he entered the classroom, he found his classmates talking about it. "I heard Spider-Man has reappeared." "Really? What good deed did he do this time?" "I heard he captured Kingpin." "Wow, Spider-Man is amazing." Peter listened to his classmates' praise of Spider-Man and his heart filled with pride. He knew that everything he had done was worthwhile. Just then, Peter's phone rang. He picked it up and saw it was May calling. "Peter, where are you? Come home quickly, something has happened." Aunt May's voice was anxious and trembling. Peter's heart sank. He sensed something bad was about to happen. He immediately asked for leave and rushed home. Throughout the journey, Peter's spider sense kept sounding alarms and he grew increasingly uneasy. He finally got home, only to find several police cars parked in front of his house and many police officers standing guard around the area. Peter's heart sank. A sense of foreboding washed over him. He rushed into the house, only to find Aunt May lying in a pool of blood. Peter felt as if an invisible hand was binding his heart. He ran inside and the scene before him almost suffocated him. May Kun lay in a pool of blood, his face as pale as paper, and a shocking wound on his chest was still gushing blood. "Sister May!" Peter rushed to May's side, his hands trembling as he tried to cover the wound but found that the bleeding could not be stopped. "Peter, child," Aunt May weakly opened her eyes, forcing a smile. Don't be sad." "Aunt May, hang in there, I'll call an ambulance right now." Peter frantically pulled out his phone but found that his hands were shaking so badly that he couldn't dial a number. "It's no use, Peter." Aunt May's voice grew weaker and weaker. 4.9 is too late." "No, Aunt May, you'll be all right." Peter's tears welled up and he hugged May tightly as if he wanted to merge her into his own body. Aunt May laboriously raised her hand and gently stroked Peter's cheek. "Peter, promise May, be strong, be happy." "Zhang May," Peter choked up, unable to speak anymore. Aunt May's hand fell limply to her side, her eyes slowly closed and a faint smile remained on her lips. "May Nyang, no!" Peter's screams echoed throughout the room as if his world had collapsed at that moment. He held Aunt May's cold body, letting his tears flow freely. He didn't know how long he cried, only that his heart was filled with endless sorrow and despair. He hated himself for not protecting May, hated himself for causing her such pain. Peter doesn't know how he got through that night. He sat on the cold floor holding Aunt May's body until dawn. The next day, Peter, suppressing his grief, arranged Aunt May's funeral. He buried her in the cemetery and looking at her kind smile on the tombstone, his heart ached. "Sister May, I will avenge you," Peter swore at Aunt May's grave. "I will find the murderer and make him pay." Peter begins investigating Aunt May's death. He uses his spider sense to search the city for any clues. After several days of investigation, Peter finally discovered some clues. He found that Aunt May's death was related to Kingpin. It turns out that Kim hadn't given up. He escaped the police's pursuit and had been secretly plotting revenge against Peter. Jin Jing knew that Aunt May was Peter's only relative, so he chose to target Aunt May in order to get back at Peter. Peter was enraged when he learned the truth. He vowed to tear Kingpin to pieces and avenge May. Peter found Kingpin's hiding place and infiltrated Kingpin's lair, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. "Kingpin, come out and die," Peter's voice echoed in the empty warehouse. "Spider-Man, you finally arrived." King emerged from the shadows. "I thought you wouldn't dare come." "Kingpin, you murdered my Aunt May. I'll make you pay with your blood," Peter roared. "Ha ha, Spider-Man, you're so naive," Kingpin laughed maniacally. "You think you can really beat me?" Try it and you'll see. Peter shot out a web and pounced on Kingpin. A fierce battle ensued. Peter and Kingpin engaged in a life-or-death struggle inside the warehouse. Peter's attacks came at Kingpin like a storm, but Kingpin fought back tenaciously with his great strength and defense. The two fought fiercely, neither gaining the upper hand. The goods in the warehouse were smashed to pieces, a complete mess. Peter's spider sense kept sounding alarms, alerting him to Kingpin's attacks. Using his spider sense, Peter dodged Kingpin's deadly attacks time and again. However, Jin was no pushover. He used his extensive combat experience to gradually gain the upper hand. 333. Peter gradually lost his strength, and his movements began to slow down. Kingpin seized the opportunity and punched Peter hard in the chest. Peter grunted and flew backward, crashing heavily to the ground. 014501427 Feilu 203,560,200. Spider-Man, your end is nigh. Kingpin grinned as he approached Peter step by step. Peter struggled to stand up but found himself powerless. Kingpin walked up to Peter, looking down at him. Spider-Man, do you have any last words? Peter looked up at Kingpin's Chinese letter Zhengning, meaning ferocious or hideous face, a cold smile playing on his lips. Kingpin, do you think you've already won? Just then, the warehouse door was suddenly kicked open and a figure walked in. Kingpin, your good days are over. The person who arrived was none other than. The newcomer was Miles Morales, another Spider-Man. He wore a red and black Spider-Man suit, held a web shooter in his hand, and stared intently at Kingpin. Miles! Peter exclaimed in surprise, not expecting Miles to appear at this moment. Peter, are you all right? Miles asked with concern. I'm fine. Peter struggled to his feet. Thank you, Miles. Let's take him down together, Miles said. Okay, Peter nodded. The two Spider-Men team up to fight Kingpin. Although Miles is young, his spider abilities are in no way inferior to Peter's. He skillfully dodges Kingpin's attacks and uses his webs to disrupt Kingpin's movements. We won, Miles said with a smile. Peter, wake up! Miles shook Peter's body vigorously. I'm going to kill you all, Kingpin roared. That's good, Peter nodded. When Peter woke up, he found himself lying in a hospital bed with Miles sitting on his bedside table. You're awake, Miles smiled with delight when he saw Peter wake up. By Zhao. Peter and Miles breathed a sigh of relief. They had finally defeated Kingpin. 3 days, Miles replied. However, at that moment the top of the warehouse suddenly collapsed and a large amount of rubble and steel bars fell down. Peter, where are you? Miles's voice trembled. Miles frantically dug through the rubble and steel bars trying to rescue Peter. How long did I sleep? Peter asked. Peter, are you all right? Miles asked anxiously. It's all right, Peter replied, just a little tired. How are you feeling? Miles asked with concern. Miles seized the opportunity to jump onto Kingpin's head and deliver a heavy blow to his skull. Finally, Miles found Peter. Peter was trapped under a huge piece of steel and had lost consciousness. Peter slowly opened his eyes, his gaze somewhat unfocused. Peter was seriously injured and remained unconscious for several days before waking up. Peter and Miles worked in perfect unison, their attacks raining down on Kingpin like a storm. Kingpin gradually found himself overwhelmed and multiple wounds appeared on his body. Watch out, Peter shouted and Fangs pushed him aside. Yes, we won, Peter nodded, a relieved smile on his face. Miles, Peter called out weakly, let's get out of here quickly. Miles helped Peter out of the warehouse with difficulty. Damn brat, Kingpin was furious. He hadn't expected another Spider-Man to suddenly appear. Kingpin screamed and collapsed to the ground. Peter, Miles cried out in alarm. Peter and Miles were taken to the hospital for treatment. I'm fine, Peter said with difficulty. 014501427 Chinese letter 203,560,550. What about Kingpin? Peter asked. You should get some rest, Miles said. I'll stay here with you. Then let's give it a try, Peter sneered, shooting out spider silk that bound Kingpin tightly. Peter was buried under rubble and steel bars and his fate is unknown. Outside the warehouse, sirens blared as police cars and ambulances rushed to the scene. He has been arrested by the police, Miles replied. Peter nodded and closed his eyes. He knew he still had a lot to do. He had to protect the city and the people he loved. He wants to become a true hero. A few days later, Peter was discharged from the hospital. He returned to his apartment only to find it in complete disarray. Clearly, someone had broken into his apartment. Peter carefully checked the apartment and found that his computer and some important documents were missing. Peter knew this was Kingpin's revenge. Although Kingpin was arrested, he still had many men under his command. Peter decided that he would completely eradicate Kingpin's forces and restore peace to the city. Peter 363 begins investigating Kingpin's men. He discovered that Kingpin's men were scattered throughout the city, engaged in all sorts of illegal activities. Peter decided that he would bring these people to justice one by one. Peter began his path of revenge. "You're welcome," Peter smiled. "It's what I should do." This woman was the girl who often appeared in his dreams. Gwen, the name struck Peter like a bolt of lightning, piercing his chaotic thoughts. Dream and reality intertwined, leaving him momentarily unable to distinguish between them. He stared intently at the girl before him, trying to find a flaw in her face to prove it was all an illusion. "Wow, you're amazing!" the young woman exclaimed excitedly. Peter's fame grew and he became the patron saint of the city. The young woman looked at Peter with eyes full of admiration. "CHCI, are you Spider-Man?" the young woman asked. He didn't know if he was dreaming or in reality. Peter was stunned. He looked at the young woman and a strange feeling suddenly welled up inside him. He would continue fighting until the city was completely calm again. Kingpin's men fell one by one at Peter's feet. "People call him Spider-Man." He looked at the young woman and suddenly felt that she looked very familiar. "Gwen," Peter repeated the name, his heart suddenly trembling. "Yes," Gwen nodded, a mysterious smile on her face. "I'm all right, thank you," the young woman said gratefully. Peter's strength and speed far exceed those of ordinary people, and his spider sense allows him to foresee danger. Peter smiled but didn't say anything. "Yes," Peter nodded. He didn't know who this Gwen was. "My name is Gwen," the young woman said. However, they were no match for Peter at all. "Are you really Gwen?" Peter asked incredulously. He felt like he had seen this woman somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where. Peter looked in the direction of the sound and saw a young woman being attacked by several thugs. Peter rushed over without hesitation and knocked the thugs to the ground. He felt his mind was in complete chaos. "Are you all right?" Peter asked with concern. Kingpin's men hated Peter to the core and they swore to tear him to pieces. One night Peter was on patrol when suddenly he heard a scream. He finally remembered. Peter knew that his mission had only just begun. Like a ghost, he moved through the city's darkness, taking down Kingpin's men one by one. How is this possible?" Peter muttered to himself. "Have we met somewhere before?" Peter asked. "I think we might have met in a dream," the young woman said with a smile. How did you know?" Gwen's words echoed in his mind, blurring the lines between dream and reality. He began to wonder if everything he had experienced was real or an illusion. A warm breath brushed past Peter's ear, sending a shiver down his spine. He looked at Gwen, who was so close to him, her eyes gleaming with an unusual light as if they held endless secrets. Peter was pulled back to reality by her teasing tone, and the inexplicable sense of familiarity intensified. He tried hard to recall the details of his dream, the gentle, kind, and clever girl. Peter's face flushed instantly and he stammered, "No, I mean in the dream we were very familiar, like we'd known each other for a long time." "Us?" Gwen raised an eyebrow, her smile deepening. "What about us?" "Mr. Spider-Man, did you do something unspeakable to me in your dream?" "Selected? What does being selected mean?" Peter felt he was making things worse by explaining, so he simply shut his mouth and angrily scratched his head. This girl, just like in his dream, was smart, lively, and had a mischievous, devilish side, requesting 0 flowers. "For me," Peter pointed to himself, his face filled with disbelief. "Why?" Gwen smiled mysteriously. "That's a secret. But I can tell you, I'm not from this world." "Okay, enough joking." Gwen's smile faded and her eyes turned serious. "Peter Parker, I know who you are." It gradually overlapped with Gwen in front of him. I've dreamt about you," Peter stammered, "many times in my dreams we." "Wait," Peter called out to Gwen, who was turning to leave. "At least tell me, how did you know who I am?" Gwen smiled sweetly, a hint of mischief in her eyes. What, even Spider-Man gets nervous. Looks like you're not all-powerful after all. Gwen shook her head. It's more complicated than that. Anyway, I come from a place you can't imagine. I came here to... She paused deliberately, observing Peter's reaction. To you. Not from this world. Peter was even more puzzled. You're an alien. Because Gwen walked up to Peter, stood on tiptoe, leaned close to his ear and whispered, "You are the chosen child." Gwen stopped but didn't turn around. "I told you it's a secret. But I can give you a little hint." She paused, then said in a meaningful tone, "What you dreamed about might not be false." After saying that, Gwen disappeared into the night, leaving Peter standing there alone, lost in thought. Peter looked up abruptly, his eyes filled with shock. He knew his identity would be exposed sooner or later, but he never expected it to be in this way, by a girl who seemed to have come from a dream. Gwen took a step back, her smile returning. "I can't tell you now, but you'll find out soon enough. For exciting novels, visit Feilu Novel Network." Gwen laughed even harder, as if she had heard a hilarious joke. "Known each other long, Mr. Spider-Man? This is our first meeting, isn't it? Have you been secretly in love with me for a long time?" Are you really Gwen Stacy?" Peter's voice trembled, as if afraid of disturbing this beautiful illusion. Peter sneered, "You lot, you're probably not qualified. The game has only just begun." Peter looked up and saw several mysterious figures dressed in black bodysuits and wielding various weapons descend from the sky, surrounding him and Gwen. Peter was overjoyed and immediately gave chase. He instinctively dodged, and several darts grazed his body and embedded themselves in the wall behind him. Gwen turned around, her face showing a look of horror. Seeing this, the other men in black immediately swarmed forward. Peter fought them off alone, holding his own. Like a nimble spider, he weaved among the men, using both fists and feet to defeat them. Peter nimbly dodged the darts, pulling Gwen behind him to protect her. "Gwen, are you all right?" he asked with concern. "Who are you?" Peter asked warily. "Peter, run, they're coming." "Gwen, wait." Peter felt like a puppet being manipulated, being pulled by an invisible force toward an unknown future. The men in black gave Peter no chance to catch his breath. They launched another attack, a hail of projectiles raining down on him. Peter nimbly dodged, simultaneously searching for an opportunity to counterattack. He knew these men were well-trained and far from ordinary street thugs. In the days that followed, Peter's life became even more chaotic. He had to deal with a constant stream of criminals while trying to unravel the mystery surrounding Gwen. It's Gwen. He tried many times to find Gwen in his dreams, but to no avail. Gwen in reality seemed to have vanished into thin air, never to reappear. One of the men in black, who appeared to be the leader, sneered, "Spider-Man, your death is near." Spider-Man, surrender. "You can't escape," the leader of the men in black spoke with absolute confidence. He stopped dodging and instead took the initiative, his spider silk shooting out to entangle a man in black's weapon. Then with a forceful pull, he dragged the man over and knocked him to the ground with a heavy punch. Finally, Peter caught up with Gwen and grabbed her arm. Who's coming?" Before Peter could react, he heard a sharp whooshing sound. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, a mysterious figure watched Peter's departing figure, a sinister smile playing on his lips. Spider-Man 620. Just as Peter was racking his brains, a sudden siren shattered the stillness of the night. In the distance, a building was ablaze, billowing thick smoke. Peter was unable to dodge in time, was struck by the electric current and collapsed to the ground, paralyzed. However, there were too many men in black, and Peter gradually felt his strength waning. Just then, the leader of the men in black pulled out a specially made stun gun and shot a powerful electric current at Peter. Gwen heard Peter's voice but didn't stop. Instead, she ran even faster. "Gwen, why are you running?" Peter asked breathlessly. Gwen was pale, clearly frightened, but she shook her head. "I'm fine, Peter, be careful." The two chased each other, weaving through the city's streets and alleys. Peter, puzzled, quickened his pace to catch up. One evening, Peter was on patrol when he suddenly saw a familiar figure appear on the street corner. Peter felt a chill run down his spine. He knew this was his duty. He shook off his chaotic thoughts, leaped, and disappeared into the vast night. "Peter, who are those people?" Gwen asked. The scene shifts to Peter's apartment. Gwen looked at Peter, her eyes filled with worry. Peter, promise me you won't take any more risks. A flash of lightning and Gwen fell to the ground. The leader of the men in black, his face deathly pale, trembled as he said, I can't say. Peter, I'm fine. Gwen tried to sit up but felt weak. Spider-Man, you're finished. The leader of the men in black walked triumphantly up to Peter, raised his weapon, and prepared to deliver the final blow. Gwen, why are you being so foolish? Peter murmured to himself. You know perfectly well that I wouldn't let you get hurt. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting a pale glow on Gwen's face. Peter reached out and gently stroked her cheek, his heart overflowing with tenderness and love. Gwen, Peter's eyes widened in fury, an unprecedented rage burning within him. Peter, why did you want to become Spider-Man? Gwen asked. Trying to run? Peter sneered, his spider silk shooting out and wrapping around the ankle of the leader of the men in black, slamming him hard to the ground. Peter took Gwen back to his apartment and carefully placed her on the bed. He checked Gwen's injuries and found that she had only been knocked unconscious by the electric shock and was not in any life-threatening danger. Peter walked up to the leader of the men in black, looking down at him. Tell me who sent you. At the critical moment, Gwen suddenly rushed out and stood in front of Peter. Soon, Peter had knocked all 27 men in black to the ground. Seeing that things were going badly, the leader of the men in black turned to flee. Peter helped Gwen up and let her lean against him. Don't move, you're still injured. Just as he was about to make his move, a police siren suddenly sounded in the distance. Peter finished telling his story and Gwen listened quietly, her eyes filled with heartache and understanding. Peter breathed a sigh of relief, sat on the edge of the bed, and quietly looked at Gwen. The men in black clearly hadn't expected Peter to be able to fight back and were caught off guard. Peter showed no mercy. Every punch and kick was filled with boundless anger and sorrow. He picked up Gwen, leaped into the air, and disappeared into the night. Peter, Gwen called out weakly. Suddenly, Gwen's eyelashes trembled slightly and she slowly opened her eyes. Peter paused for a moment, then said firmly, I cannot agree to that, Gwen, because it is my responsibility. Spider-Man, you've successfully angered me, a chilling voice said. I'll make you pay. Gwen, you're awake, Peter exclaimed, grasping Gwen's hand in delight. Not going to talk? A cold glint flashed in Peter's eyes. Then don't blame me for being impolite. He struggled to his feet, ignoring the numbness and pain in his body, and attacked the man in black like a wounded beast. Gwen sighed. She knew she couldn't change Peter's mind. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, a mysterious organization is holding a secret meeting. No, Peter shouted, but he was powerless to stop it. Peter shook his head. I don't know either, but I'll definitely find out and teach them a lesson. 14,501,427 Felu 203,590,030. Peter looked at Gwen, a complex expression flashing in his eyes. He slowly began to tell his story. Peter knew he couldn't stay any longer. He glanced at Gwen lying on the ground, his heart filled with pain and self-reproach. Peter, I know you're under a lot of pressure, Gwen said. But I want you to remember that you're not alone. I'll always be by your side. Peter nimbly dodged the attack and spider silk wrapped around the rhinoceros's arm, attempting to restrict his movements. Peter knew he was no match for the Rhino Man in a direct confrontation. He had to outsmart him. Gwen, believe me, Peter said firmly, I will protect you. The rhinoceros man paused, but quickly regained his balance. He pulled hard, snapping the spider silk. Gwen, let's go, Peter shouted to Gwen behind him. Peter looked at Gwen, his eyes filled with gratitude and love. He lowered his head and kissed Gwen's lips. Get out of here, Gwen roared. You'll see when you try, Peter said, as his spider silk shot out and wrapped around the rhinoceros man's leg, trying to trip him. Peter stood up again, facing the rhinoceros man, and assumed a fighting stance. It was a tender and affectionate kiss, full of love and promise. Peter wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and shook his head. I'm fine. With a deafening roar, a large hole was blasted open in the apartment wall, sending debris and dust flying everywhere. A burly figure clad in black armor stood outside the breach, his red electronic eyes flashing. Peter, Gwen exclaimed. Before the kiss was over, Peter abruptly pushed Gwen away and the spider silk shot out the window like an arrow. Don't push yourself, Gwen said, looking at Peter with concern. We're no match for him. Just then, Peter's spider sense suddenly activated, and he sensed a powerful danger approaching. Spider-Man Rhino scoffed, "You think you can beat me, huh?" The rhinoceros charged at Peter again, its massive fist carrying devastating power. The pebbles struck the Minotaur's armor with a crisp sound, causing no harm. But the rhino was enraged by Gwen's courage. He turned to Gwen and raised his fist. "It's no use," the rhinoceros man roared, his powerful strength breaking free from the spider silk's restraints. "You can't stop me." "Is that so?" The rhinoceros man let out a maniacal laugh, swinging his massive fist at Peter. "Then I'll destroy everything here." Spider-Man's deep voice echoed from beneath his armor, "We meet again." "You are Rhino Man." Peter recognized the man at a glance. He was the supervillain he had defeated before. Peter knew Gwen was right, the Rhino were far stronger than them, but he couldn't back down, he had to protect Gwen. Peter was thrown back by the immense force, crashing into the wall and groaning for 3 weeks. "Damn it!" Peter cursed under his breath. Gwen was pale, but she didn't panic as usual. She picked up a piece of gravel and threw it at the rhinoceros man. While dodging the rhinoceros man's attacks, Peter observed his surroundings, looking for anything he could use. At the critical moment, Peter stood in front of Gwen and took a direct punch from the rhino. "That's right, it's me, Tilda," the rhinoceros man said in a deep voice, stepping into the apartment, each step making the floor tremble. "I've come to reclaim what's rightfully mine." "Peter, how are you?" Gwen rushed to Peter's side anxiously and helped him up. "Your things," Peter sneered, "nothing here is yours." "You're asking for it, what?" Gwen didn't react for a moment. Peter left Gwen's apartment, soaring through the New York night sky. The cold wind whipped his face, making him acutely aware of the responsibilities he bore. He was no longer just a superhero, but 10 men tasked with protecting their loved ones. 014501427 Chinese letter 213,080. "Gwen, help me knock over the refrigerator," Peter shouted. "Ah!" The rhinoceros man screamed in agony, his eyes burning so badly he couldn't open them. "Hurry!" Peter urged again. Caught off guard, the rhinoceros man crashed headfirst into the refrigerator. "Spider-Man, you finally arrived!" Kingpin's voice boomed through the plaza through the loudspeakers, tinged with mockery and smugness. "I know you care deeply about this girl and her father's lives, so I'm giving you a choice. Either submit to me and serve me, or watch them die." Gwen's tears welled up. It's Kingpin," he said. "If Spider-Man doesn't show up then," she choked up, unable to continue. "Peter, you're amazing!" Gwen exclaimed excitedly. Gwen looked at Peter with eyes full of adoration and love. Although Gwen didn't understand Peter's intentions, she did as he said. With all her might, she pushed the heavy refrigerator over. Peter smiled and said, "It's nothing." Peter gently patted Gwen on the shoulder, giving her a reassuring look. "Don't worry, I promise you." "It's Gishi's phone." Gwen's trembling voice made Peter's heart sink. The sheriff, Gwen's father, had been arrested. By whom? Why? A series of questions exploded in his mind. "Damn it!" Peter cursed under his breath. "Gwen, don't worry, I'll get your father." His voice was deep and firm, with a slight, almost imperceptible tremor. Now, Peter seized the opportunity, his spider silk flying, binding the rhinoceros man like a dumpling. A bold idea popped into his mind. Kingpin chose to publicly challenge Spider-Man in Times Square. When Peter arrived, a large crowd had already gathered in the square, staring in horror at the sheriff, who was strapped to a giant LED screen. With a muffled thud, the rhinoceros man was knocked dizzy by the refrigerator. Kingpin, the emperor of New York's underworld, a behemoth Peter had always wanted to bring down, yet feared for his power. Now he was using the sheriff as a hostage to threaten him. Peter felt a surge of anger rising from the depths of his heart, burning his reason like volcanic lava. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Gwen answered the phone, her face turning deathly pale instantly. Gwen looked up at Peter, her eyes blurry with tears, filled with fear and helplessness. "Peter, you have to be careful." Peter took the opportunity to tie the bird up even tighter, and then used spider silk to attach him to the ceiling. "Done!" Peter clapped his hands and breathed a sigh of relief. The refrigerator tipped over with a loud bang, blocking the rhinoceros's path. Peter didn't stop there. He found a bottle of 273 hot sauce in the kitchen and sprayed it on the rhinoceros's face. "Who is it? What happened?" Peter asked anxiously. "What, my dad? He's been arrested." Suddenly, Peter's gaze fell on the refrigerator in the apartment. He knew that this opponent was no ordinary man. Kim not only possessed immense power but was also incredibly cunning. He had to proceed with extreme caution and tread carefully. Suddenly, a cell phone ring broke the silence of the apartment. "Let me go," the rhinoceros man roared, struggling, but to no avail. Gasps and screams erupted from the crowd, and chaos reigned. Peter stood on the edge of the high-rise, looking down at everything in the square, his heart filled with anger and helplessness. He understood that Kingpin was forcing him to make a choice, a difficult, almost impossible choice. He took a deep breath to calm himself. He knew this wasn't the time to act impulsively. He had to stay calm and find a way to rescue the sheriff without revealing his own identity. Peter activated the communicator on his suit and contacted Gwen. "Gwen, listen to me, I need your help." Peter told Gwen his plan and told her to prepare herself. He knew the plan was very risky and that a single misstep could lead to complete failure, but he had no other choice. Time ticked by and the atmosphere in the square grew increasingly tense. Kingpin was getting impatient. "Spider-Man, have you thought this through? My patience is running out." Just then, a figure rushed out from the crowd and headed straight for Jin Bing. "Stop, Kingpin, let go of my father." "It's Gwen." Peter's heart sank. He knew Gwen was buying him time, but he hadn't expected her to act so impulsively. "Heh, what a touching father-daughter relationship," Kingpin sneered, grabbing Gwen by the neck and lifting her up. "Spider-Man, looks like your little girlfriend is pretty brave, but that courage will soon turn into despair." "Let her go," Peter's voice came from the high-rise building, carrying a hint of cold, killing intent. Peter leaped from the high building, slicing through the night sky like lightning, heading straight for Kingpin. Seeing this, Kingpin's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Spider-Man, you've finally taken the bait." He tossed Jersh into the air, then swung his scepter at Peter. Peter caught Gwen in midair and gently placed her on the ground. "Gwen, are you all right?" Gwen shook her head, her eyes filled with worry. "Peter, be careful." Peter gave her a reassuring look, then turned to face Jin Jing. "Kingpin, today, let's settle this once and for all." A fierce battle unfolds in Times Square. Peter, with his agility and strength, holds his own against Kingpin, requesting flowers. Although Kingpin was massive and incredibly strong, Peter's agility made him difficult to predict. Peter moved around Kingpin like a nimble spider, constantly searching for his weapon. Suddenly, Peter seized an opportunity, his spider silk flying out and entangled Kingpin's scepter. "Now!" Peter yanked hard and snatched the scepter away. Without his weapon, Kingpin's strength was greatly diminished. Peter seized the opportunity and delivered a powerful punch to Kingpin's face. Kingpin was knocked back, a pained expression on his face. 014501427 Feilu 213,450. Yule. Kingpin covered his face, his eyes filled with anger and resentment. Peter gave him no chance to catch his breath and launched another attack. His 2 points, like 2 threads, landed on Kingpin, each season carrying immense power. Kingpin was beaten so badly that he had no chance to fight back and could only passively take the beating. "Stop, Spider-Man, I give up." Kingpin finally couldn't withstand Peter's attacks and begged for mercy. Peter stopped his attack and stared coldly at Kingpin. "Kingpin, do you think this will end here?" He walked up to Kingpin, grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. Their plan was to lure Kingpin to an abandoned laboratory, then activate the laboratory's self-destruct mechanism, blowing Kingpin up along with the laboratory. "Everything? What do you think you still have?" Peter's voice was cold and devoid of any emotion. Peter sneered, veins bulging on his hands as if he were about to crush Jin Jing's hand. 480, Jin Jing, New York City can't tolerate a Buddha like you anymore. Kingpin was terrified, his face ashen and his body trembling like a lamb to the slaughter. "Spider-Man, spare me. I'll give anything." Kingpin's face contorted with fear. "Spider-Man, what do you want?" "An even bigger storm is brewing." "I know, but this is the only way to completely defeat Kingpin." Peter's eyes were firm and unwavering. "I want Spider-Man dead at any cost." Kingpin's voice was icy, filled with murderous intent. Gwen was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I support you." Suddenly, a piercing siren blared as it approached. Gwen's eyes widened in disbelief. "Peter, this is insane." Damn it! King scrambled to his feet, wiping the blood from his mouth, his eyes filled with venom. Spider-Man, you just wait. I'll settle this score with you sooner or later. This plan was extremely risky because they had to ensure that Kim wouldn't escape before the explosion, while also ensuring that they themselves could escape the lab in time. With everything prepared, Peter and Gwen began to implement their plan. Really? But Gwen was about to say something when Peter interrupted her. He raised his fist, ready to deliver the fatal blow to Kingpin. Peter and Gwen's plan was to exploit Kingpin's greed and lure him into a trap. They knew that Kingpin was searching for a technology that could enhance his power, and Peter happened to know the whereabouts of this technology. Peter returned to his apartment, took off his battle gear, and lay exhausted on his bed. The battle of the night had left him physically and mentally drained. Over the next few days, Peter and Gwen began secretly preparing their plan. They knew it was extremely dangerous and a single misstep could lead to utter ruin, but they had no other choice. Spider-Man, drop Kingpin immediately, you're surrounded. Peter frowned. He knew he couldn't delay any longer. He abruptly threw Kingpin to the ground and the spiderwebs shot out as he quickly disappeared into the night. The next day, Peter arrived at school and found Gwen waiting for him. I won't let your actions of arresting the sheriff and threatening me go unpunished. Peter's voice was icy, tinged with murderous intent. Meanwhile, Kingpin was secretly plotting his revenge. He summoned his men and gave them new orders. Peter sneered, I'll make you pay. Really, I'm fine. By the way, I have a new plan. Peter smiled mysteriously, leaned close to Gwen's ear and whispered a few words. He closed his eyes, the image of Gwen's worried gaze flashing through his mind. He sighed. He knew he couldn't go on like this. He had to find a way to completely eliminate Kingpin, otherwise Gwen and the city would remain in constant danger. Peter, are you all right? I was so worried last night. Gwen ran over to Peter as soon as she saw him and asked with concern. Peter smiled and patted Gwen's head. I'm fine, don't worry. I knew it, this old guy's tough. Peter sneered, flipping himself to his feet to meet Kingpin's attack. Kingpin's suit was torn to shreds and his face was covered in blood, but the ferocity in his eyes burned even brighter. He roared, waving his fists, and lunged at Peter. Suddenly, Peter's spider sense went off again. He looked up sharply and saw a dark shadow burst out of the explosion's flames like an angry bat hurtling towards them. Boom! On the day of the transaction, Peter and Gwen arrived at the lab early and planted a bomb inside. That's right, Peter nodded. Once you activate it, you'll possess unimaginable power. Is this the technology you were talking about that can enhance my strength? Kingpin's eyes were filled with greed. Kingpin, your death is near, Peter sneered and pressed the detonator in his hand. As night fell, Kingpin and his men arrived at the laboratory. 27. Cough cough, damn it, Kingpin actually planted so much explosives in the lab, Peter cursed, wiping the dust off his face. Finally, they broke out of the ventilation duct and landed on the roof of an abandoned building. Peter collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath while Jersh leaned weakly against him. Where's the stuff? Kingpin asked impatiently as soon as he entered the room. Peter smiled and pointed to a device in the center of the laboratory. Right there. Cough cough. Peter, can we escape? Gwen gripped Peter's arm tightly, coughing incessantly from the thick smoke. Kingpin took the bait and immediately sent someone to meet with Peter, agreeing to make the deal in an abandoned laboratory. However, at that moment Peter suddenly shouted, "Oh no, this is a trap." The laboratory alarm suddenly went off and the red warning lights flashed wildly. Kingpin walked over and carefully examined the device. Even if he didn't die, this 727 incident is enough to make him drink 10 strokes. Peter, posing as a mysterious seller, contacted Kingpin, claiming to possess the technology Kingpin had always dreamed of. What's going on? Kingpin roared. With a deafening roar, the entire laboratory was instantly engulfed in flames. Did we succeed? Gwen asked weakly, her eyes filled with worry. Kingpin was overjoyed upon hearing this and eagerly pressed the start button on the device. Peter gave a wry smile. I don't know, the explosion was too powerful. Even if Kingpin was made of iron, he'd probably be in serious trouble. But he paused, a sly glint in his eyes. With everything prepared, they waited quietly for Kingpin to arrive. Kingpin, he's not dead yet, Gwen cried out in terror. Will Peter and Gwen manage to escape? Will Kingpin really be killed in the explosion? Stay tuned for the next chapter. The explosion lit up the night sky and the shockwave shattered the surrounding glass. Peter, clutching Gwen, fled through the laboratory's ventilation ducts. Debris and flames chased after them like relentless hounds from hell. Kingpin's expression changed drastically. He wanted to run away, but it was too late. Peter didn't answer but gritted his teeth and quickened his pace. His spider sense was frantically sounding alarms, warning him of the danger behind him.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.